care about any of these things. Let's get started. Thank you all for being here. This is Reverie Roundtable, which we have at Mondays, 8 p.m. Eastern. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, we got a fantastic group of individuals with terrible takes on TV, and we will introduce them. Introduce them time, right? From from worst to best. We start with Wick. Wick, thank you for buddy.
No, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to come on and argue with everyone here. It's fun. I enjoy it. So thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay. Next we have our friend Scott. Scott, we always appreciate having you back here. Thanks for coming through.
Yeah. Thanks. I'm Scott from Fabian Liberty. You know me, and you probably hate me if you're in Prime Kai's audience. But if you want to watch some hate-filled debate moments and talk about how dumb I am, I'm literally debating like all week for whatever reason. I just kind of booked myself. So I'm debating here, and then I'm debating poly people on my transphobic views tomorrow, and then which is going to be hilarious. It's gonna be so much fun watching her bleed. And then Thursday I'm gonna be on another panel, and then Friday I'll debate counterpoints in the Crucible. So debating all week. So come check it out if that's what you're into.
Counterpoints. Shout out to my man Counterpoints. I miss him. I miss him a lot, actually.
You guys are so fucking tense. There you go.
No, you don't gotta miss him. He just did it. He just did it.
I got you.
He just did the thing.
Okay. All right. Let's go to our friend Jay Chow, who we haven't had here in a little bit, but we've missed him. I've reached out to him so often, but he's been busy out there doing his thing. Jay Chow, thanks for stopping by again.
Yeah, no problem. And Fabian, just to give an idea of how much Prime hates you, as you were doing your introduction, there was an ad, so nobody got to listen to whatever you said.
It was it's automatic. It's an automatic
ad.
Yeah,
that's what he says. That's what he says.
Okay.
Yeah, but thanks for inviting me on. It's good to be here.
Cool.
All right, and if you guys want to skip back to the chat, consider doing that. All right, let's go to.
I mean, that's their fault for not subbing. Like, if you want to hear the capitalists speak, you got to fucking pay the bucks.
That's right. Let's go to my man Fanatic. Fanatic, thank you for back. Stopping by. Always one of the most colorful people here on the panel, on the channel. So you're always appreciated.
You say colorful? That's really fucking racist. Can you take that back?
You ain't lying in any capacity. You're right. I am one of the most colorful niggas here. I appreciate that. And I would say, follow me, twitch.tv/Mr. Fanatic. I'm excited to be here. Y'all niggas know, I am, I'll be doing debates and stuff. It's funny that you mentioned poly people. I've only had an interaction with poly people because Prime, you hosted her one day. Or you hosted someone who hosted poly. And I look on my stream at the tab that I had open of your channel, and that it was now this person. And so I'm talking, and I engaged a little bit, and they're just like, oh, we end up getting into a debate. And that debate went so south so quickly because they're so psycho. And so I have those videos. I'm probably link it here. If you look on my channel, I think it's Fanatic Debates Unhinged Trans Person, because that's what I called her. An unhinged trans person because she's absolutely psycho. I think there's some people that you just really can't interact with because they're not really worthy of debate. They're not sane people, and she's one of them. Either way, I'm excited for these conversations. I don't think these topics are things that are really up my alley, so I'm gonna try my best to be engaged, but I might not, bring the typical Fanatic. But who knows? It's always there.
I've never heard this poly person. I don't know who this person is, but
she's
don't waste your time.
Don't waste your time. It's the same. It's the Demon Mama, poly people, Pinto. All of those kind of anarcho-communists kind of have their own little space on Twitch ball.
But I feel like the ideology doesn't matter because she's fucking crazy.
Yep. So. Can't interact with them. It doesn't. They're never gonna win anybody over. It's just a waste of energy and time. They don't exist. They're not people.
Fuck you! I'm gonna do it for the content anyways. It's gonna be hilarious.
No, I respect it. Yeah, you should. I can't wait to watch the video.
She's constantly coming at me for being an ANCAP and shit, and then now she was like, "You're a fucking transphobe."
Okay,
I'm gonna fuck.
Let's move forward for the introductions. But thanks so much. Next we have Corey Campbell, one of the nicest people here, which is why I don't know why he interacts with us.
Don't slander me like that, Brian.
Thanks for being here, friend.
Yeah, always a privilege to be here. Again, I try to never take it for granted. I'm always grateful for an invitation. I'm Corey Campbell, PhD candidate in biochemistry. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv, Corey Campbell 84, on Twitter, Instagram. Literally, it's Corey Campbell. I'm especially grateful to be here with my fellow Canadian lactoid. Always a pleasure, just like last week, with his urine-soaked flag. I now know why it's soaked with that substance as a Canadian. So I'm glad we're multiplying. And welcome, lactoid.
Okay, I'm gonna skip the lactoid just for that. So I've been binge watching. I usually don't binge shows, but I actually been binge watching The Americans, which I had never actually seen, but wanted to see that. Right? It's a show about Russian spies living in America, and it's like, oh, this is practically a documentary for lactoid. Lactoid, okay, all right, like look, and that's exactly what a spy would do, right? Like have a flag waving behind him. So lactoid, you've been found out, but we love you any which way. We won't turn you over to the authorities.
Yeah. So we're here to talk today about my dear comrade's daughter being killed, which is unfortunate, but I'm looking forward to that discussion. How do I sound, guys? I just got a brand new mic.
Oh, do you have a wrapper in your hand?
Are you crinkling a candy wrapper?
Oh, that mic is very audible.
Hey, you might want to put a filter if you're able to. I think it's picking up a lot.
You might want to stop hurting our ears, please.
Okay. Is it okay now?
You're fine.
Okay.
Are you still ringing?
No.
Well, you gotta test it out.
You're still.
I'm just kidding. Move on.
I don't know what that's on. So yeah, Lactoid. You can find me on Anti-Communism United, Discord and Twitch. I'm upgrading my gear, so there's going to be some maybe some irregularities, but hey, just bear with it, and it'll be good in the end. Thank you, Pride, for having me on. I'm looking forward to talking to all of you wonderful people.
So you were telling me that you're gonna get a new camera. I'm not sure how the new camera is going to help when like it takes like it shows this much of your face. Okay, all right. So I don't know.
That's the only thing people want to see.
Okay. All right, buddy. Thank you so much. Next, our friend Tiberius D is with us. Thanks for being here. Ty, how are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for letting me crash the panel on short notice. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, hey, there's a Russian assassination topic, and we're talking about the French, and I wasn't invited. What the hell, Prime? So I appreciate letting me drop in last minute. This one should be fun, even though I have absolutely done no preparation, but we'll see how much I know my shit in the act.
The best, Twitch debates happen with no preparation. Let's go to our friend Doobie, our Dark Lord and Savior, back with us as always. Thanks for being here, Doobie.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Okay. Let's jump in. Okay. Topic 1. Climate activists in France have filled golf course holes with cement as a form of protest. While much of France is under severe water restrictions due to a historic drought, golf courses have a legal exemption. This allows them to water their extensive fields while others can't even wash their cars. Do you think that destruction of private property is warranted for these types of protests? If the activists somehow manage to permanently shut down these businesses through sabotage, would they be better than a common criminal? Or does bringing attention to the existential crisis of global warming override such concerns? So yeah, it's just as it sounds. I think these activists did to 2 golf courses in France, and they filled like the holes themselves with like cement. They got like video of them doing that. And obviously, the course is unusable until they manage to fix that, which I don't imagine is extremely difficult. But like you are, destroying private property, and there's a thing that's come up again and again. It's come up in like BLM. Is this worth it? Like, does it change just because of the context for protest? So yeah, that's what I'm really interested in exploring. Let's start with our man Wick.
Yeah, so when it comes to these kind of protests, and we see them all the time, not just with golf courses in France, but the people who are super gluing their hands to art and things like that, the people who are disrupting traffic and literally blocking traffic and things like that. I think there's a level where protests do have to, at some level, be disruptive. Like, there is value in that. There's value in getting into attention, but you have to balance that alongside of the real risk you have of turning people against you when you just fuck shit up, right? When you destroy private property and things like that. And it's a balancing act, right? You gotta look into it. Like filling up golf course holes, it doesn't get my gander up, right? But when you talk about like this scene where we saw recently, where a bunch of people blocked from Extinction Rebellion, I believe was a group that blocked these lanes of traffic, and a man who was on probation who couldn't get to his job, and if he didn't get to his job would go to jail, was seen like arguing and wrestling with these people, saying, please just let me through, just one lane of traffic, please, love of God. Like, that optically does not work. It just does not get people to your side. So when you want to be effective, when you want protests to be effective, you have to balance optics into it. You just have to. And things like blocking traffic and things like that can have deleterious effects to what you want to do. That's my thoughts.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, so in terms of like, a scale of protests, like what's bad and what's not bad, obviously as someone that believes in natural law philosophy, that the destruction of private property is always morally wrong. You can't justify it. You logically can't justify it, because to do so, you would have to call yourself an animal, and you would be incapable of making any logical statements at all. That being said, like there are certain things you like really focus on to like stop. And then there are certain things that like, I have bigger fish to fry, because it's kind of fucking hilarious. Right. And I won't lie, like it does in my heart make me giggle a little bit when the government is restricting water, but not for, their fancy fucking golf courses. And they attack those golf courses. There's a certain bit of me where it's like, okay, the state is privileging this one business over everyone else in their own authoritarian structures. Like it's difficult for me to be like, have a big outcry here. But it is wrong. There's no doubt about that, destruction of private property is not right, and you're not actually attacking the right people. You're not going after the politicians. You're not protesting in a way to actually change things. You're doing the same shit Extinction Rebellion always does, which is bullshit anti-capitalist fucking Malthusian screaming and freaking out. Yeah, so I mean, like I would say that it is wrong. There are a lot worse things to be wrong about, and the real issue here is not the impending climate doom that we hear about every 10 fucking years that never comes to fruition. The real issue here is that the state during a drought is restricting people's water, and punishing and being tyrannical against its citizens, and then picking winners and losers, such as, the rich people so that they can have their pretty golf courses while fucking over other people instead of privatizing the water like they should.
Thank you. Jay Chow.
Yeah, so I think this is vandalism just at its core, but for the sake of protest, I think this is a pretty brilliant approach. If we were to go down the criteria of what Wick was talking about, is it like complete destruction that is really going to turn people off? No, you're putting cement in holes. There's nothing burning. There's
you sound a little low to me. Am I the only one?
No, it's pretty low.
Yeah, you sound a little low.
I hear a crinkling, I think.
Oh, okay.
That's
That's so funny, Lactoid. Yeah, no, I should be sounding fine. It's fine on my end.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe bring your mic a little bit closer.
It's like, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I think vandalism is vandalism. And but for the sake of protest here, I think this makes sense, because if we were to go down the criteria list of what Wick just talked about, it's not like this, nothing's burning, nothing's being graffitied or anything. It's cement in golf holes. And is it bringing attention to the issue? Absolutely. I would not have known that France, I didn't even think France, it was possible for them to be in a drought. I would not have known personally that France was in a drought if it weren't for this event, and we wouldn't be talking about it here. So I think it is doing a lot to bring the issue to people's attention. And I think a lot of people in France, because of this, are going to be like, yo, what is actually going up with these golf courses, getting these legal exemptions from this law, from this tyrannical government, going back to what Fabian was talking about. Now, is it like effective enough to bring down this business? No, absolutely not, because what golf courses could do is make new holes. I saw this video on r/oddly satisfying. Yeah, they fill up the hole and then they dig up a new one. And so then what the activists are going to have to go back and put cement back in. Yeah, probably if they want to keep on going, but I think they've already accomplished the goal, which is, well, getting the issue out to the public.
Sounded so much sexier when he got closer to the mic. I'm just gonna put that out there. All right, let's go to Man Fanatic.
I think activism is brilliant. I think it does a really good job of like bringing awareness, and that's the goal. I think in this case, what they did is they brought awareness. I didn't understand it. I didn't know. I had no idea that France was going through a drought. And I guess it really just matters most that, you know, you do attach it towards something, like to where it's like some sort of political cause, so that you have something to do with your activism. So it's not just doing things for the sake of doing things, but doing some things with the value of like indicating, hey, something needs to change and you need to be aware of this. I think all of it makes sense. This is something that's like very minor, like putting this whole, like I'm doing this thing. If they're successful enough to be able to lobby different people to be able to say, hey, we should be able to continue to get water and whatnot for our golf courses, they definitely have the money to withstand somebody just inconveniencing them by putting a hole, right? By putting cement in their holes. Furthermore, I don't think that optics are such a problem when it comes to like, you know, the stopping traffic thing. I think it makes all the sense in the world that just when you have a person that's like, yo, I'm on probation, and if you guys don't let me through, then like I can go back to jail. I think that just indicates how absolutely ridiculous parole and probation are. Like the fact that there's like so little wiggle room and things like that. I don't think that optically hurts your cause. I also think that you could decide to make an exception for that one individual. But I think it also really, really highlights the reason why people stop traffic in the first place, which is to indicate you're going on with your life while this problem is severe and needs your attention, and you're just willing to chase the bag and ignore all of this. I'm stopping the traffic, so now the problem is confronting you as well. So as much as you want to say, oh, it's not my problem, I don't need to march, I don't need to do anything to be there, now the problem is actually your problem too, because it's impeding on whatever it is you want to do. And I think all of those things are really, really great in helping people to make sure they get the attention. Now, some people are going to be sour and say, I don't care about this. But guess what? You're now aware of the issue. And I think that if you have a moral compass, eventually you can say, while I wasn't originally moved by this, let me figure out what the hell they're even angry at. And now that I know what they're angry at, some people who have consciences are going to say, hey, you know, I actually care about this issue. And I think that's what activism does. So it's a great job. Big ups to them. I'm not even sure that global warming is real. I've never done a lot of research into it. I'm probably going to assume it's real, just, you know, for the sake of whatever. I hope that people aren't just doing some crazy, gross conspiracy to like make everybody whatever the freak. So I'm going to say that it's probably real. I haven't done my own personal research, but if it's real, how else do you get people's attention? They did their job, and I think that's a good thing.
Okay, all right. I was unexpected ending to that, but okay, let's go to Matt Corey.
Yeah, I pretty much echo virtually all of the same sentiments that came before, like Fnatic, Jay Chow, Scott, and Wick.
Global warming might not be real. That
No, Scott and Jay Chow. Well, maybe Scott, a little bit elements of maybe not as big of a deal as the crazy media is making it out to be. But yeah, totally, global warming, climate change is a thing. But in terms of particularly
I can't help but think it's kind of hilarious.
To, in terms of
I know it's wrong.
I sort of perceive protests.
And I should oppose it.
To some extent, like a PR campaign.
But it is kind of fucking
a large
fun.
part of the intention is to sway public opinion, and there's clearly a tipping point when it comes to protest tactics that your tactics can work against you, and public opinion will start going against you. And I think if you protest intelligently, you will get your point across and you will get public support. And I think based off of this tactic here, at least based off of the article, like it seems like they really went about it in a pretty intelligent way. Of like, sure, technically this is destruction of private property, which is totally the most immoral thing in the world, according to some people. But despite this destruction of private property, Overall, it's pretty innocuous when it comes to the actual larger issue of climate change and all the implications as a result of climate change, and how as alluded to by Scott, the government is sort of picking winners and losers. To maybe use a more Canadian example, I'm a filthy Canadian like Lactoid. I'm in Quebec. This is pretty much like hockey central, and if we were in the middle of a drought here in my province and we were using water to fill up hockey rinks or to maintain our hockey stadiums, I would be pretty enraged and I'd be pretty motivated to hopefully protest in an intelligent way. And so I think pretty much it seems like we're all on the same page, at least so far. That's it for now.
Yeah, thank you so much. Next, Tiberius D.
Sorry, I had to mute there for a second. First, I'd like to start off by saying that this is a perfect time to build even more golf courses. I think we need more. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. We'll use all the fucking water. We'll give none to the people. Of course, I'm aiming here. I think most people know me pretty well by now. Property damage isn't cool, all right? I've been on here when the churches got burned. I was here when the houses got burned. I've condemned it then. I've condemned it now. The other side of that conversation, though, that you guys bring up is the activism point, because while I'm not much of an activist in oh, hey, we got to get people's attention by fucking up something horrible, is that on the other side is that this is something that happened in France and we're talking about it here in the States. Clearly, it's gotten attention and it's done what it was supposed to do. I'm not equipped to deal with the meta ethics of that, but there's just a level of me that does not like that. I would very much like our wonderful people to get together with their representatives and to be like, yo, what the fuck? Why are we doing this? Why do we allow this kind of thing? Change the laws. But that's the reformist in me. Finally, actually, if it does seem like I'm not really too concerned about golf courses, I am incredibly biased against golf courses. They're actually one of the most hideous, disgusting things humanity has put on this fucking planet. And when I see it, I'm not gonna cry a river. I don't care how much money has been spent on it. I'm just not too sad about this one. Anyway, that's all I got for now.
Thank you, Blackwood.
All right, well, just go ahead and stop me if for some reason the mic doesn't sound correct. But as a true American, not Canadian, as a true American, this is vandalism. And while I understand it might not be as bad as other forms of vandalism, I almost feel as though it's being treated flippantly. I think this suffers from the same problem that I think some people before brought up, like the BLM protests and the blocking of roads. And I think this suffers from the same issue of the innocent party problem, which is, we can construct a hypothetical that would seem very unfair to everybody in this room. Okay, so I have one neighbor on one side, and then I have one neighbor on the other side. My neighbor on my right side shoots my dog.
Anybody know how much damage is actually?
And then I get angry, and because I'm angry, I burn down my neighbor's house on the left. All right, even though the left neighbor had nothing to do with it, didn't hurt me, didn't go after my dog, is going to walk out and say, "Hey, what the hell? You burned my house down." And then my response is, "Well, he shot my dog." If my house just got burned down, my response is going to be, "Well, then why the fuck did you take it out on me? Why are you coming after me? I'm an innocent person." The United States prohibits punishing innocent people. It's against the Geneva Convention to punish innocent people under groups. I assert that when people do these kind of protests where they're hurting innocent people, I think that they are violating the spirit of the Geneva Convention. They are engaging in group punishment. These golf courses already have had to make concessions. They've had to cut their water to a third, less than a third of what it currently is, and they can only allowed to water during specified periods of night. Their justification is that unless they can use this, just like everybody has to cut back, they also have to cut back. But if they're forced to cut back completely, it's over 15,000 high-paying jobs done for, right? These are economic. These are places of economic growth. These are also people's personal property, right? So there's an economic element. There's an element of this is somebody's shit who is innocent. And also, France is one of the most responsible countries in the world when it comes to energy use. They're mostly nuclear power. So they're like 78% nuclear power. They're 19.3% renewable. Their coal consumption is negligible. The idea that we're going to start raising awareness in France that there's an issue. France isn't the issue. France doesn't need to change. It's other countries that need to change, like Australia, China, Russia, and to some extent the U.S.
Thank you so much. Doobie, please.
Yeah, so I guess I'll just echo what Lactoid said. I feel like we are treating this kind of flippantly. And so yeah, we can say, hey, it's just concrete. They can replace the holes, etc. But I think allowing for this kind of behavior encourages further behavior down the road. So I hope these people are found and prosecuted severely. And I think that the fact is these golf courses have already made a deal with the government. I think like in 2019, they're only using 30% of the water they normally would. So they're doing what they can to keep their golf courses from falling apart and turning into wastelands, while helping out with this problem of climate change, right? In the best way they can, because they've got a drought going on. And the reality is that if they don't water their fucking grass, it's going to die. And if it dies, it'll cost them millions of dollars to replace it. Right. So, they have that reality to contend with. They made a deal with the government. They went through the proper authorities and the proper processes that we'd expect them to. If you don't like that, go to your fucking government. It just seems childish.
So, yeah, this has been brought up. Like, why are we treating this so flippantly? Why are we being so kind of cavalier about these things? And while we can acknowledge that property damage and things is on some level bad, right? Like, it makes sense to me that we would treat someone burning down a church much differently than putting cement in the holes in a golf course. Like the level of harm here that is being dealt, the ease with which it's fixed, these aren't comparable, right? They're not comparable. And so to act as if we should take as much umbrage at the golf course holes to someone burning down a church is weird to me. It's a little wild to me that we would treat.
What about throwing rocks through the windows of the church?
This is probably a bad thing to do. I'd condemn that, but I would condemn that less than burning down the church.
Sure, but I mean, it's still a bad thing that people shouldn't do, and if they do it, they should be prosecuted.
Yeah,
right?
but you talked about earlier in your statement, right? That prosecuted severely, right? I would severely prosecute someone who threw a rock through a window, right? I just wouldn't do that.
And well, yeah, there's sort of Wick's point of like, to some extent, like, sure, maybe in an ideal world, and also I'm not against perhaps like prosecuting these individuals if in fact like they're found and caught and whatever, we have evidence that they did it, whatever, and they go through the proper processes to recoup whatever damages that they can. But also at the same time, sure, you can say in an ideal world they should be prosecuted, but like already in the system it's built in like just some like petty crime, like whatever, go to your local police station, say that your wallet got stolen. They're not gonna like just some crime they overlook because this is not worth it to put in the human power to track it down.
Maybe
this but this is the issue. This isn't petty crime.
Right. That's kind of what I was going to say, is that like it is important to recognize that, like, at least from my perspective, right? You are a criminal if you vandalize someone's private property. The only way that you can make yourself not a criminal is to give some form of restitution. Now, under, our current liberal democracies that often avoid, there's a criminal legal code of, paying fines to the government and, and then there's civil court cases, et cetera, et cetera. But in order to not be a criminal anymore, you have to pay restitution. Now, for some of this form of vandalism, it's as simple as digging a post hole, right? And replacing the hole, putting some grass in. It's a very cheap replacement in terms of labor and everything. It's a couple $100 to get it all fixed. The problem is that when you already have some of these greens that are already stretched for water, cement can poison the grass, and then you have to replace the entire like burn or an entire section. And golf courses to reconstruct, they can cost like $7-10 a square foot. And so if you have to replace, let's say, a couple 100 square foot because you poison it and it like fucked up all the grass and it has to be replaced, restitution now isn't, $100 or $200 a damage. It's actually extremely expensive in terms of property damage. It could even get close to, let's say, the burning down of that church. And so, like, I do think it's important to recognize that, what is morally right and what is morally wrong is, in terms of, did you damage the property? And,
but that's
and
really
how
reductive.
do you pay restitution?
I don't think the activists care about damages and the price.
Okay.
Well,
I was gonna say
that's
criminals. No one is making.
They don't
like,
care because they think about something else more of a priority, which is bringing attention to this issue because it's related to climate change.
Right, and I think it's really reductive to like try to reduce the conversation down to like the total cost of whatever the thing that someone.
How is that reductive? Can you explain?
Well, sure, because obviously when we're talking about the gravity and the impact of these things, like what someone's goals are and what the aim is, like trying to say, well, yeah, but just this one costs about the same cost as it costs to replace the church. It's like, I think these are wildly different, right? Because one, obviously, the church is going to probably serve as some sort of core function of that society as far
They're
as like
both
housing
holy
people,
sites.
so on and so forth. One's going to what's it called? Like. One of these things is like literally has been like a hallmark of the society and been instrumental in helping people's lives. The other one is just a simple thing of entertainment that like a few people probably enjoy. These are wildly different. Number one. Number two, I would also say Andubi. Okay, sure. I don't think you know what the word reductive means. Doobie, the question I had a question. Oh, sure you do. So Doobie, okay, but you were literally just reducing it to the actual cost of cash. Okay, but I'm being reductive. Doobie, you earlier made the statement that like these people are criminals and you kind of don't like it, and so on and so forth. So then my question became, do you ever believe in any kind of civil disobedience? Do you think that there's ever a point where someone should be doing something that is illegal in order to push some sort of political aim?
So oh god.
I was asking Doobie. Doobie.
You attack my position and then
you'll get a chance. You'll get a chance. You'll get a chance.
I'll keep it short. So as a last resort, right? What would be my answer, right? So if you've tried the other methods and that isn't working, I think there might be a justified like use of force at the end of that. However, it doesn't seem, given what Lacto laid out earlier, this country is very, very like pro climate change legislation. They're doing way more than the surrounding countries to deal with this issue. So it doesn't seem like people are just ignoring this fucking problem, right? It seems like these courses carved out a deal with the government. They're holding to the deal, and they don't like the deal that these people legally carved out. But just really quickly, and I think that my issue is with this, the way this kind of being framed by a lot of people here, is that like what we're actually talking about is intentional destruction of private property in to further like a political message, right? And the issue is that you guys just happen to agree with the political message, right? If these guys were doing this in favor of like Nazism or some shit, I'm sure you'd be like you'd be one of these people tracked down and charged.
Of course.
Right? So yeah, so like it just seems like we shouldn't dismiss this kind of stuff or minimize how terrible it is because we agree with the message.
Well, no, but that's literally baked into it, right? It's like simply, like, for example, like obviously there's some sort of civil disobedience, like such as like registering to vote when you knew that it was illegal, right? Well, I remember like when they were discriminating, right? Or Rosa Parks refusing to get to the back, sit at the back of the bus. I mean, to sit at the back of the bus, right? Like those kinds of things, like you can say, like, hey, this is absolutely activism. This is actually criminal, right? Because it was illegal to do this. But then there comes a point where you can start saying there is a moral impetus to do something in order to force people to respond in certain ways. And that's what civil disobedience has always done. Even protests, where it's like, hey, we're trying to set a curfew to stop you from protesting, where people make the decision like, no, we're going to keep this protest going because it's a righteous cause. And if we don't, then that means that we may never actually get accomplished what we're trying to do, right? So then like there's plenty of times, and obviously baked into all of those things, it's going to be the idea that the only thing that will justify you doing this, like breaking this civility, right, is going to be like if you have a righteous cause in order to do so. You're doing so with an aim and a purpose, and so anybody who believes in that aim or that purpose is going to go ahead and is going to get behind you. So it's not that we're just happening to agree with this and therefore it's right.
That's literally got a whole list.
That's literally baked into the idea of protest.
Dupe, you can respond. Hold on 1 second. Dupe, you can respond. Then we're going to Scott, Corey, J. Chow, Lactoid, Tiberius, and Wick. Okay. All right. So
I mostly agree with you. I think the core disagreement that I have is I'd put a dividing line between private property and public property and government property. Submitting those illegal requests to the government or registrations to the government versus breaking somebody's window or setting someone's car on fire because you disagree with a political action that's happening or a law that's in place. I'd stick a dividing line there, right? So
okay.
I think that's our core disagreement.
Okay.
Scott, your turn.
Wait, we don't have a core. I agree with you. I think burning a business is worse.
So again, you said that I'm being reductive in the way that I define restitution, right? Like I don't want to make this a diatribe on explaining restitution. But the fact of the matter is that if you burn down a church, right, you cannot give perfect restitution because you cannot give back that exact church in that exact condition. You either have to rebuild a church or you have to come up with some sum of money that represents the value of the church, and you can't ever actually know the value of anything because value is held subjectively by the individual. And so, it's, whoever the primary property owner is, et cetera, et cetera. You do the best that you can until the situation is alleviated in some form of compromise of restitution. Now, in terms of this idea of civil disobedience, civil disobedience is almost always passive resistance, right? I think what you're doing is you're attaching the ability to break laws that are brought by a government, and then saying that it's okay to break laws by the government for moral reasons, which I do agree with. And then you're tying that to something that is a property damage or a tax against other people as a justification because the issue is somehow bigger on a macro level, or some consequentialist analysis of like how the ends justify the means. It's okay to hurt some people that stand in your way if the end result is better for everybody in some regard. And I would say that no, that's not what's okay. It is okay for Rosa Parks to refuse to sit at the back of the bus because the law itself is a form of aggression against her that specifically targets her based off of her race by the state and forces her to be segregated in some form. That is not the same thing as actively going out and damaging other people's property in active resistance to harm other people and their property as a means of getting an environmentalist message out. Like, these are very clearly different things.
Yeah, it's crazy because Fabian just didn't listen to the exchange that Doobie and I had where we already covered that. And again, he was still being reductive. So we're just going to move past that. Next person can go.
I just have a clarifying question or two for Doobie, where you alluded to when it comes to civil disobedience, like
What a
you are
fucking
okay with it as a last resort. Is that correct? As in, like, as a last resort, you are okay with some sort of...
Dude, like, what a
so
fucking
I'm
pivot.
curious
He
to
just
know,
goes, I already
at what
answered
point
that.
do
No,
you
you're
know
not
that
what
you
were
have,
talking
like, basically, what's, like, your checklist of, like, okay, now it's
That's
like
gonna
resort.
like okay, so like this is gonna depend like very much so on the reason we're being disobedient. If people were being harmed as a result of some policy in place. It's like it would depend like on a lot of shit, right? But for me, I think that if you've petitioned the government, right, and the thing that you're petitioning them to change is doing like harm to people, right? Whether that's like where you don't have access to like voting rights, or you're being targeted by the police or whatever the fuck it is, and you have evidence of this, then yeah, I can imagine, like, if nothing else is working, then staying out past the curfew, protesting in front of the police station, even setting the fucking police station on fire if there's nobody in it. I can imagine all those things being reasonable at some point. And I think any reasonable person would say that, hey, at some point, if something terrible is happening to you as a result of government policy, and nothing you're doing is getting that government policy to change, but you need it to fucking change because harm is being done to you or to your family, to your community, etc. Like, yeah, at some point, you're going to cross the line, right, into violence. Like, I would just avoid violence against people if at all possible.
Sure, and I think I tend to agree with you. I would just say, I think a lot of protests or protests like this, where I would say, in the grand scheme of things, fairly innocuous. It's like to hopefully with the goal in mind to prevent to getting to that point, as in, all of the negative consequences aren't piling up, and then now it's the last resort. We can maybe be more violent or more aggressive, where it's like, I think it's fair to say, at least, younger generations, they're pretty vocal, at least based off of the polling data that I've seen, of climate change is a problem. Like, when you start doing something, and I'm assuming that holds true in the younger generations in France, of they want action to be done, and it doesn't seem like action is being done. And so maybe these types of, I would say, innocuous protests is like an attempt to get attention and not have to resort to sort of those drastic measures.
Yeah, I feel like I need to point out the consequences of what I just said, right? Because I think this kind of goes both ways. So if I were like if I were a person in a neo-Nazi group, right, and everything we're doing to keep the black and brown people out of my country is not fucking working, the government isn't working, everybody's fucking NPC, nobody's listening, I'm trying to vote to change these policies, it's not fucking working. At some point, I might think, hey, fuck it, I'm gonna go shoot something up, right? And I think it's obviously extremely dangerous line of thinking, but I think it's just a reality
No,
of
Doobie,
living.
it's worse. What he basically said is that it's like white supremacists attacking and vandalizing Mexican restaurants or Jamaican restaurants, and then him saying, well, that's okay because like action's not being done to get rid of black people in their neighborhood. So like, but it's not really like
I can engage with that, but
wait,
I mean, that's
but please don't. Please
Wait,
don't,
hold on,
Corey,
but
because
I'd like to wrap up
we
the last
already
thing.
embedded the idea that in order for these things to be justified, we already have this moral impetus to make sure that that there's a righteous cause that they're fighting for. So immediately trying to create some
righteous
parallel,
off of your
I think obviously it's going to be subjectively righteous, right? Because unless you believe in moral objectivity, right? So then obviously,
I do believe in moral objectivity.
I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking to you because you're an idiot. I'm talking to Doobie because he actually has a working brain. I'm not addressing this towards you. So anyway,
That's
so
what
Doobie,
you always
obviously,
say when you can't.
I got it. I'm trying to actively avoid it. Don't talk to me, Doobie. So otherwise, like, so the point that I'm making is that, like, obviously, yes, you can easily create a parallel where you find some cause that obviously everyone disagrees with, and then say, well, yeah, see, these people could do the same thing that you're doing, and they would be doing it for their cause, right? But I think then that, like, obviously is. I'm not saying that you're trying to be bad faith, but it kind of sullies the conversation because now.
Wait, hold on. Well, I wanted to finish the sentence, right? Because I wanted to acknowledge that. Hey, yeah, it is going to be subjective, right? But that's okay. I'm not a person that's afraid of imposing my subjective beliefs on people. So if I subjectively believe, like, hey, you don't get to fucking keep all the black and brown people out or attack the gays in the streets, and hey, that's just what it's going to be because there's more of me than you. Hey, fuck it.
Sure, but I'm saying, but it's not a fair parallel, obviously, to introduce that into this conversation where we all obviously feel that like Nazism is going to be terrible, and so then it's like you're creating a thing. Well, what happens when bad actors? Because like you can use that argument to literally dissuade from anything. For example, you can say, I believe that we should have like an elected body and so on and so forth, and that they should do whatever, right? And it's like, okay, well, but what happens when the person that's elected is evil? So then therefore we should like undo that system. It's like, no, obviously not. Like the system still functions. We just got to make sure that like hopefully the people are doing right by it, right? And you could say the same thing for police officers, right? Well, we should never have police because if police is corrupt and they have like undue power, then they can like do some really, really heinous things, right? And it's like, well, no, we probably wouldn't just make the argument then that we should get rid of police altogether. The argument just becomes that, yes, people with power have a greater responsibility. You could use that for anything. What happens with parents? Parents shouldn't be watching their kids because if a parent has a bad intention with the kid, that they have even unfettered access to abuse, right? No, obviously there's going to be a moral belief that like the people that have the power, the people that are using whatever tools, that those people have a moral thing that we all agree with.
So just to like agree with you
simple.
again.
Attacking.
No, let Doobie respond. Shut up.
And then I got to move on afterwards. We got a whole line.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just to agree with you again, like, yeah, I think any reasonable person would say that at some point violence is necessary, right? If there's some harm being done that they subjectively believe is harm, right? And to be clear, it might even be worth crossing the line into destroying private property or attacking just individuals directly, right? So if I were in a place where all the water is controlled by this one company and people are fucking dying of like dehydration or whatever outside the fucking walls and they're not giving us fucking water, yeah, fuck that private company. We're gonna attack it and take it, right? Like at some point, you're gonna get there. I think the core disagreement is just gonna be as to whether or not this is worth it, right? In this particular instance.
Sure.
Private property.
So I don't even know if global warming is real.
Private property damage against a non-aggressor is objectively wrong.
That's
period.
Right.
It's
Corey,
objectively wrong.
Did you finish your point? And then we got to go to J-Chow.
I did. I would gladly cede my time.
Okay, so in this conversation, I think three things have to be separated. The legality and the morality of things is pretty obvious. Yeah, vandalism is illegal, and I don't think anyone on this panel would be like, yes, vandalism, let's go. But for this conversation, it's a bit more nuanced into the morality area because, well, it's for a specific cause. And so then, as what Fanatic was saying before, yes, us believing that whatever that was being done, the holes being filled up with cement is good is because, well, because there is a goal in mind and a message in mind, and it's worked. And when it comes to the actual consequences, well, they're very minimal in my opinion. And so we have to like make that separation there. And then there's another thing: policy versus activism. Yeah, sure. France, I'm very unaware of France's targets when it comes to its climate change policies and whatnot. But right now they're in a drought, and so then they put forth a policy. But this policy is really, I would say, like kind of ineffective when you're still allowing golf courses to use up so much water. Yes, maybe they cut it by half or a third. Maybe they had to bargain in order to get the government to agree. But the activists, they don't care about that, whether or not it's being met in the middle. They just want it all out because they kind of see it as a whole. Golf courses need to go. And another thing, if we're going to be talking about then the policy of a country, and everybody's saying France is so much better than other countries around the world, no country in this world is on track to being compatible with the Paris Climate Accords. And so then I think everybody still needs to do a good job. And even if France is like, 95% there, well, they got to get to that 5%. And if the activists are kind of being like, yo, let's get up to that 100%, then maybe this is a reason why they are doing this in the first place. And then the last separation I want to mention is the short-term consequences versus the long-term consequences. And I think on the discussion of restitution for the damages, is a short-term consequence. We know what are its immediate effects and the monetary cost of it as well. But then when it comes to the long-term consequences of, say, like climate change, it becomes a little bit murky, because especially when an action on one side of the planet can influence a reaction on the other side of the planet, we can't calculate that. But what we do know is that if climate change were to occur, as what the scientists are saying, if we're not compatible with the Paris Climate Accords, it could be disastrous. Some might say that this could be near like extinction levels. I'm no like scientist myself, so I can't say whether or not personally this is true or not, but it seems like it's really dire. And sure, maybe golf courses are like maybe millions or billions dollar industry, but then if that is the trade-off to the life of the planet and the human species, I'll gladly take that trade-off.
Okay,
especially it's fucking golf courses. Like, come on. Golf. Who likes golf?
Plays golf. Just keep that in mind.
Plays golf? Good.
Lactoid. Lactoid tied then Wick.
Yeah, I just don't see how these golf courses are. Like, it's not like they're not even doing what the government wants them to do. Right, they are abiding with what like the incredibly pro climate change recognition and addressing government in France wants them to do.
They're not compatible with Paris.
And what happens
it's
if
not
people
good
feel
enough.
Like because like look, we using that argument, we could say things like corporations right now in the country, they're doing what the government requires of them. When you find out companies like Amazon and Walmart are paying literally $0 in taxes because of nonsensical loopholes, then it feels like, yo, look, just saying, well, the government, it's what the government said, then I can see where people can start feeling like yes, You've gotten the government in your pocket, so you're able to get away with nonsense that's still harming us. And if they feel that way, I could totally understand why those people would say that's not enough. That clearly just the government allowed it is not a good barometer, right? Because the government was literally enforcing some of the civil rights stuff that was like literally harming Black people, right? The people had to decide, hey, I know that the government told you that this is okay. We're saying it's not okay, and we're willing to fight it, right?
Right.
Like,
No. So I get that, right? I guess more along the lines of what I'm doing is, it's not like there's like this, I guess, this perception that they're in like the government is in their pocket. They had to cut their water down to 30% of what it is, right? This is like the bare minimum they can do unless like they lose everything. And if they lose everything, that's millions of dollars and 15,000 people out of work. Now, that's important for like the long-term like economic success of a lot of specific areas. But also, again, I think it suffers from like the innocent party problem. If during the Civil Rights Act, instead, protesting and stuff, instead of the Montgomery bus boycott, right, where people very rightfully said, we're going to enact our right to choose and not engage in a particular service, which forced the bus to change because, that was a major part of their ridership. If instead of doing that, they just found some random white guy and like beat him up, or they found some like random white store and trashed it and destroyed it, or some house owned by like a white family, like, you guys voted for, the racist party, we're going to like torch your fence now. Like, I think at some point, is nobody here concerned about innocent people getting hurt? And
Okay,
it seemed
in the
like
middle of a drought.
and it seemed like between Doobie and New Fanatic, there was some agreement here of like kind of the public-private distinction, because yes, the government is the one that's actually conducting these actions.
I think
but the private organizations here are they are innocent to some extent, right? And so I don't know, like with blocking the cars, I guess my question for you, Fanatic, would be like, do you still hold the position that like that's okay, like the position that you had when you came in here, or are you now like kind of reevaluating that?
Well, I've always, I still feel like blocking the cars would be okay. But I think again, the thing that Doobie and I were, the agreement was, it was more so he was talking about like persons, like personal things, right? Not like something a lot more, defensible, like a business, right? Because I don't believe that corporations are people, and I don't think I would ever compare like some damage towards a corporation to like actual like personal damage on a citizen. I think those things are wildly different. Number one, and then number two, it's crazy that you say like, yes, they should have just done what they were doing as far as civil disobedience, because when you start talking about the civil rights movement, I don't know if you're particularly familiar with this, but if we want to start talking about the long hot summer of 1967, which largely drove God knows how much of that civil rights thing, there were violent protests all around the country, and it's impossible to detach that violence from the actual civil rights legislation that we're talking about, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Voting Rights Act of 1968, and so on and so forth, right? Like, so it seems like for Black folks, the violence is pretty much the only way that we've ever been able to achieve the type of success that we're talking about when it comes to political aim.
All right. I just fundamentally, I guess I'm not.
I'm sorry. Wait. Before you say you disagree, I want you to understand something. I didn't voice to you my opinion. I didn't give you my opinion that's whatever. What I'm stating to you is the fact that you cannot tie any civil rights progress for Black people in this country. You cannot point to any of that where we can't find an attachment of violence. So what I'm saying is that it seems like that's the only effective way.
Can I ask you a question?
I was just.
This is just wrong. It's factually wrong.
So
right?
Name it then.
Sure. This disentangling. Let's go through it, right?
Name it. Sure. I want to get that last point out, and then Wick, go ahead. Sure. After that, and then Doobie and Scott. Okay.
So while it is factually correct to say that there were violent,
no. I said no. Lactoid. Get the last thing out. You guys.
Just because I was going to say. So when I'm saying I disagree, I guess I'm more specifically talking about If there were certain events in the civil rights movement that they were targeting innocent white people or innocent Black people or innocent people of any race, which I think we saw a lot in the LA riots, to me, the hypothetical would be like my right-hand neighbor does something, so I hurt my left-hand neighbor for it. They're innocent people, and there's something particularly distasteful about attacking innocent people that I think, maybe to Doobie's credit, like I can't even think of scenarios in which it would be justified, because it seems like in every scenario in which it would be justified, you could just simply take out that aggression on the government instead, like the actual entity which is harming you, as opposed to innocent people. And blocking roadways, I think there people discount a lot of the harm. It's tremendously risky. You're raising the risks of accidents, fatal accidents dramatically. Ambulances can't get to where they have to go. And then, of course, obviously, the massive inconvenience. I think Wick brought up one example, or somebody brought up one example, I'm sorry, of somebody who potentially had their freedom at risk because of. Sure, you can say it's like a bad system, but these people are instigating.
I never do this.
Kind of weakness of that system,
I'm about to bring up
and that these innocent people are going to be the ones that suffer for it. I think that's just
going to annoy
unfair.
everybody, but I'm just doing it.
Let's go to Wick. We'll go to Wick, Doobie, Scott, and Jay Shaw. Okay. And Ty.
Okay, so to back up a little bit and address you directly, Fanatic. So when we talk about the civil rights movement in the 1960s and things like that, you're right that there was violence associated with that movement, but I think you're exactly wrong when you say that helped the movement, or it was, if anything, helped progress towards the movement. If anything, it stymied it. It made it last longer. It drew it out longer and we can point to this by looking at the 1964 Act, how that passed before the violence occurred in the long hot summer summer of 1967, right? Like the long hot summer of 1967 obviously didn't have anything to do with the 1964 bill passing or not. It was
Do you think that
totally
there was no
disconnected
violence
from
before
that.
the 1964
There
Civil
was,
Rights
but
Act passed?
I would.
Okay, so then what are you talking about?
So what I'm talking about is you saying the violence was there, so that's what led to us getting it passed. Is just
Sure.
is
Yes. Okay.
not-
So here, let me get. So again, I'm asking you for a specific piece of legislation that you can point to of civil rights progress for Black people that you can't associate with any previous violence. And if you're talking about the 1964
that wasn't your
civil rights,
claim.
that was my claim. My claim, as I stated it very clearly, was that you cannot point to a single piece of legislation that exists or any sort of civil rights progress for African Americans in this country that you cannot detach the violence from it. That's what I said. And unless you have an example of that, it sounded like you were going to be pointing. It sounded like you were going to be pointing towards the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and again, we had violence for that as well. So again, do you have any?
So what you said, and I want to be clear, and the one thing I am pushing back against is you said, to paraphrase you, that it seems like that violence is the only effective solution for Black people.
That's not what I said, and I just restated it again. So I'm just going to disagree with you. I'm disagreeing with you. You're just now you're okay, good. Then get the quote, because I just said what I stated, and I said it as clearly as I stated the first time, and now you're going to go and try to go some erroneous paraphrase instead of actually dealing with what I said. I resaid what I said. What I said, and now you're just misquoting me and not actually arguing what I said. So yeah, you're not actually engaging in good faith. You're a liar.
Okay, all right.
It's a liar.
So again, look at the vid. I want you to clip my words right now. Look at the vid. Go back.
I said what I said, and I know what I said, and you're a liar.
Exactly. Go and see it and judge between me and Fanatic here. And I'll expect that apology, right? After you go and look this up afterwards, okay? So this goes to the larger point, though, when it comes to these things about, obviously, no matter how righteous you think your cause is, there have to be limits on what you were allowed to do.
So you're not going to name any piece of legislation? You can't? You're not going to?
Again.
Because that was a challenge that I put out there.
You said no. The challenge that you put out there, right? The things that I'm pushing back that you are claiming you didn't have said, right? That you claimed that you didn't say, but you obviously did. Was that
so you're not going to name a piece of legislation? Okay, I got it. As long as everybody on my side sees that I asked for a piece of legislation that wasn't tied to violence, and he hasn't been able to name one. He said when I made the statement. I made the statement specifically that you cannot name a single piece of legislation that existed for, and he's not naming a single one. So again, the challenge is not just to him; it's to anybody else. That's what I said. Literally any person name a single piece of legislation that is not tied to it. You can't name one, and I was correct.
Wait, Fanatic.
Title IX wasn't for Black people. I said specifically when it came to Black people in this country.
Fanatic.
I said that originally. I'm not moving the goalpost. I said that originally. I said specifically when it comes to Black people in this country, you cannot name a single pet piece of progressive legislation that we can't attach to violence. Name it.
Fanatic.
Okay, so I was right.
Wait. So
what you're saying is that Black.
I said what I said. If you can't name it, I don't need to engage.
Fanatic.
You don't even remember.
Hey, Lactate, you go. I'm talking. Go ahead, Lactate. Go ahead. What were you saying?
Yeah. So I just wait.
Lactate's talking. Lactate is talking.
Okay.
Fanatic, you said that it's
Lactate is talking. Lactate, make your point.
I want to hear what Lactate said.
Thank you.
Why are Black people
Fanatic?
Lactate.
I don't understand.
Lactate, you finish, please. Thank you.
So what I think Wick is trying to get out before getting interrupted constantly is that the point here is, maybe you can't point to any like civil rights legislation for Black people that isn't tied to violence. But there's a question as to, did this violence actually help the situation, or was it successful despite this violence? Doobie has been in the chat, and there's evidence to suggest this, that violence in civil rights movements tends to actually have the opposite effect. There is a blowback. People don't like to see this, and so it creates a political opposition to these movements in ways that non-violent protests simply don't create.
Well, unfortunately, that's just simply not. Well, yes, that might be true. And so that quote is always being used. It creates dissidence and so forth. But in reality, what ends up happening is
his audio, he goes from quiet to screaming.
Reality.
What ends up happening?
You can repeat it all the time.
What ends up happening? What ends up happening, shut the hell up.
No.
What ends up
crazy.
happening?
Moron,
What
you're
ends up
wrong,
happening?
You're stupid.
What ends
and
up
you're muted
happening?
now, bitch.
What ends up happening is that what you'll find is that at a local level, that these things are incredibly effective at actually bringing awareness and like politically motivating people. What you will see though is that people outside of where the violence occurs, typically, yes, that it is not good optically for them.
Gone.
And so that's done.
We're done with that, man.
So we're fully aware of that. But the example that I would give you, if you want to talk about like actual like change that happened as a result of this, would be within the long hot summer of 1967, where the Detroit riot. The Detroit riots were literally the largest riots that happened during that year, right? Of all of the violence that happened, it was the largest scale, right? And in that one specifically, that motivated Romney to go to, he was a Republican at the time, to introduce legislation specifically aimed at like helping, like getting rid of the housing segregation. And he specifically cited the violence as the cause for removing that. He specifically said, if we do not pass this legislation, we will never be safe in our streets. He said those words specifically. And the Republicans had previously rejected the legislation and said, we do not want to do this. We're not going to have race mixing. We're not going to have them living in our neighborhoods. But once he cited the violence and said, this is what's happening, this is how dangerous it is, and our streets will never be safe if we don't do this, that's what finally said, okay, fine, we'll go ahead and pass that. That was the like launching point for Michigan being the most progressive when it came to housing legislation of the entire union, right? Like they undid all of that. They literally hired their very first black police officer after that in like 60 years or something like that, and then went on for the remainder of the year for like 70% of their police officers to be black. They completely ended all the segregation. They introduced like 13 different laws. They became the most progressive. So to sit there, and then of course that like there was also violence all around the rest of the country, and then that also like because that was what was one of the largest driving forces or driving aims of that violence was specifically towards getting fair housing. So that I don't know how you could possibly detach the two. It's one thing if you could say, oh, maybe it seems like there could have been some association. It's another thing when you can say he literally said it out of his own freaking mouth. Sure. This is the reasoning for it.
We gotta move on. So let's go to Doobie, Scott, J Chow, Ty.
So really quickly, so I put something in the group chat that someone in chat posted in Prem's channel, and I saw this 2 years ago. So I need to go over it again before I feel like confident arguing about it. But I remember it being very convincing, in that violence actually did reduce vote share. But again, I saw it 2 years ago. I need to go over it again. But that's not what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to ask Lactoid a question. Because I did agree with Fanatic. Right? There is like a distinction that I'd make between like attacking like individuals, private property, and like the government, right? But even then, I think that there's a point at which you could cross that line, and it might even be justified, right? So yeah, people are voting for policies, but if someone's voting for a policy that is doing like active harm to you and your community, your family, at some point, a vote is more than just like a dot on a piece of paper. It's you're voting for a policy that does real harm in the real world, and it might be reasonable to say, hey, you voted to do this terrible thing to me, so fuck you. You don't get to do that, right? Just because there's more of you. So I think there's just that meme line that people throw around: one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. And I think there's like truth to that, right? And I think we need to acknowledge that. We say, hey, yeah, well, who decides what's the good thing or what's the bad thing or what's worth the violence? Well, yeah, it's obviously subjective, right? But I think that just saying that this is never acceptable is just not true. I think we need to acknowledge that it is sometimes.
Oh yeah, ultimately, I guess I agree. Like ultimately, it's subjective, but I just don't see it being a feasible, like when you're talking about like going after individual voters. It would simply be more effective just to go after the government and just curtail certain democratic rights, which we currently do, right? Despite the fact that most Americans want to illegalize burning the flag, and the Supreme Court says, no, you can't do that. Democracy doesn't rule in this case because of the First Amendment. Now, there's one situation in which we simply say majority doesn't rule, as opposed to going after the people who believe that it should be illegal. I just don't see it as in the vast majority of cases, and
I'll give you a real world example,
and especially this case, it being either superior to any other option.
I agree with you, but I'll give you more politically relevant example, right? They're an example that's relevant today. A lot of trans activists, for example, it always gets back to the transes, consider these bills that are being pushed to like stop giving like puberty blockers, HRT, whatever, to trans children. They consider that like a form of like genocide, right? Because we know what that does to the rates of suicidality, right? Yeah. First off. So they would say, hey, you are intentionally harming these children, leading to their deaths. So I saw Vosh make this argument a while back on his stream where he was talking about like, hey, at what point, you know, if they're intentionally causing the deaths of these children, because we know that's what the result is, whether or not they say that's what they're doing or not, at what point does it make sense to take up arms?
Right. Well, but even in that case, the only logical, so I don't agree with that. But even if I did, the only justifiable course of action would be to take up arms against the government, not against your neighbor because they happen to be there, because they had nothing to do.
What if your neighbor is donating to the party that's doing this, knowing that the party is doing this, he's voting for them to do this policy, he has a sign in his front yard? Like at some point,
attacking this random guy is a.
I mean, I'm not talking about like how
it's not going to make a dent. Right, it's not going to make a dent. It's going to be ineffective. And this is what I'm saying. Like it seems like in every scenario, this is just simply not
just ineffective. Counter-effective.
It's counter-effective.
Yeah,
in every situation is counter-effective when there is better alternatives, and it's not even anywhere close effective enough to justify the fact.
And I'd agree with you
that you are doing a moral wrong, and I do think you're doing a moral wrong. You know, despite the fact that your target happens to be like a corporation, like a conglomerate of people, as opposed to one person. You know, if this, let's say you have a business, like a small business that's owned by one person, that's their lifeline. Yeah, you destroy that entire person's like economic well-being. Maybe it's owned by 10 people, right? You destroy that. You destroyed it like a significant amount of effort and time put in by 10 people. Like you essentially destroyed the assets of 10 people. Like these things have ripple effects down, and they affect people. That's their stated intention. Their stated intention is to hurt people. And there does come a question, there comes a point, right, where it's like, you are hurting innocent people. You better have a rock solid justification. Like I'm not even in favor of hurting innocent people, but if you're going to, like, you better bring me a rock solid justification. And your justification is, well, when they cut their water usage by down less than a third, and they have to restrict the hours they can do it in order to not go out of business, so 15,000 people lose their jobs, and we're still pissed about it. That's your justification for attacking innocent people? Go fuck yourself.
Well, if you're saying by them continuing to,
I know Scott's supposed to go next, but like, are you really insinuating?
I don't know. It seems like a justified.
Let's go to Scott. Scott's been waiting. Scott, J. Child, Ty.
Scott never contributes.
Yeah, so I don't normally get super nerdy on these panels because these panels usually aren't the best place for it, but I think it's warranted right now while I explain as quickly as I can that it's not possible for you to actually argue without a performative contradiction and prove an impossibility proof that you're just wrong, that you can substantiate aggression towards another individual. Because by the very means of you arguing with me, you demonstrate a certain preference and private property aspect by usage of your scarce means of your time and body. And by doing that, you presume that all of human action requires this preference of your own exclusive control of your body. By doing this to justify to go against the right of the justification of exclusive control, you actually engage in a performative contradiction. So when people say, you're being a moral realist, or you're, that all morality is subjective, both of these things can be true, but according to basic logic, you cannot actually justify destruction of someone's property that is a non-aggressor. Only when someone is an aggressor upon you and upon your private property, because of the fact that argumentation without a performative contradiction puts forward the idea of first user, first owner private property rights, that it's actually impossible for you to make a logical argument that says that you can, because the ends justify the means, you can attack someone else's private property. So to make that argument is to make an illogical argument. And because it's illogical, it cannot be a valid proposition. So you are just wrong. Now, if you're like Doobie and you're saying, look, other people have committed certain forms of active aggression against me by way of their vote, by way of engaging in a system that is violent towards me and my goals, That is true, but again, you have to engage in restitution in order to correct the imbalance here. Because the moment you go beyond restitution in a non-voluntary means, you actually become the aggressor in that situation. So if someone, let's say, votes to restrict or make water more expensive, and then you go over and you burn down their house, you've become the aggressor in that situation. And this is a morally unjustifiable position. There. You guys can deal with that as you want. And I get that argumentation
I guess
is really nerdy, but it's
you're
not going to find the
You
hole.
didn't say anything of value.
Wait, hold on. So Scott, I agree with everything you said up to the very end, right? Actually, I raised my hand earlier because I was gonna bring up the thing that you addressed like right after I raised my hand, so I appreciate that. But I guess I would just agree that being the aggressor is like inherently like immoral. It's in an unjustifiable position. I think it is justified to be the aggressor sometimes, right? In cases like the one the hypothetical I laid out, right? So there's
but you just
live in a place
engaged in a
where
performative contradiction by having because you're arguing with me, therefore you already presuppose the right of exclusive control over my body as a means of us having this very conversation.
Until that right of exclusive control of your body and your property does some kind of harm to me, right? What you're choosing to do with your body and with your property does some kind of harm. In the case that I laid out earlier, which would be hoarding all the water in the area, so I have no water to drink and my family's fucking dehydrating, right?
Well, it depends on what we mean by hoarding the water. Now you're engaging in positive rights that doesn't actually fit the logic of the situation.
So I laid out a hypothetical earlier, right? So there's a company or a person or a thing that is like taking control of all the water, and they are either let's say they're just increasing it the price of this thing to a level that is totally unreachable, right? Nobody in the area can pay for it, right? So people, as a result, people in the area are dehydrating. The harm is being done to them.
That's an unjustifiable moral position to attack them if they have exclusive control over the water and they did not steal exclusive control and they're selling it. It's
I would just disagree.
You can't justify
it
morally.
I would say that you can be the aggressor.
You can be the aggressor.
Please, you can be the aggressor. You can be the aggressor by your lack of a certain action, right? So you not opening up the doors and giving these people who are dehydrating and dying at your fucking gates, you not giving them water is an act of aggression, right? So they'd be justified in taking the role of the aggressor and taking the role of the aggressor and attacking your compound and taking the water for themselves.
That's not a refutation of it. You became the aggressor by attacking someone because of their own exclusive control of their private property.
Yeah, and I just think it's justified to be the aggressor sometimes.
Jay Chow,
yeah, but that's illogical, so you're wrong.
And Corey.
Okay. Yeah, so I want to respond to Lactoid's thought experiment, in which it just by itself, I completely agree, okay? If there is an innocent person that gets affected by somebody being pissed at something else and they're not like doing anything about that something else, but to the innocent person, then yeah, that's kind of messed up. No, it's not just kind of messed up. It is messed up. Now, the problem with applying our issue at hand, which is the golf course cement thingamabob, to that thought experiment is that it just doesn't apply, because the golf courses and I would say are hardly innocent in the issue. Not saying that like they're guilty of the drought, they're responsible for the drought, but France is in a drought, and this is my personal opinion. I think most people would agree to say that like if you're a country in a drought, you probably like using any sort of water for the golf courses is just not a priority and should not even be protected. Yes, there was a deal being made with the government, which probably would have like
I had to get nerdy with these people because they're just it's so stupid.
It's just like that water could probably be used in better ways than watering golf courses. And then the other thing which I find baffling, which is what made me go into Upward earlier, I apologize, is when Lactoid, you started to equate people filling up golf holes with cement as like violence and damage and hurt against people. Which, like, one, there is no physical violence being done against people, and even if you're talking about the monetary damages, it probably doesn't exceed the thousands. As what Fabian just said before, like, yeah, sure, even if the cement starts to poison the surrounding grass, it's not going to put them out of business. It's they could always replace the holes. Yeah, sure. If the people are ever caught, the vandalizers, they're probably going to go to prison, and maybe they'll have to pay restitution. Who knows? And maybe that balances things all out. They're not doing this with the express intent of hurting people. No, they're not. They're
Private
trying
property
to get
damage is
they're
enslavement
trying
of
to.
people.
It's not intent.
Yes,
it's not
it
an
is.
intent. It's a consequence. It's a consequence, not an intent. Their intent is probably to get the issue out to the public in order to spread awareness, in which, as we've said before, it has done so. And so then for you guys to completely say that this is just completely violent and they're just like vandalizers, just criminals equivalent to
they are.
like the
it's
most
very simple.
terrible criminals, okay?
It's actually really simple.
No, you're just wrong.
I'd like to respond
No,
to
no,
this, actually.
it's actually really
Yeah.
simple, right? When you damage someone's property, right? That property is mixed with their labor, either the money that are required in order for them to gain that, or the labor that they put in themselves. You cannot separate the labor from the private property. And because that labor is directly connected to it, by damaging their property without restitution, without being able to give them
These
anything
owners
in
are
return,
probably
then
millionaires. They'll be
it doesn't
fine
matter.
with a couple of
It's-
cement in the golf holes.
Okay, so it's okay if I only kick your ass a little bit, not all the way a bit, because you'll be fine.
You guys are
If I
making
go
it
there and
sound like
beat
they're
your
gonna go out
fucking
of
ass, it'll be
business and
okay,
die.
because
That's
I
my
can kill you,
problem.
like you'll
Hold on.
heal. Right?
You're
What
taking
you've
I
done
want
what I'm saying
is
to
your
the
labor.
extreme.
No, I'm not. I'm simply explaining what property is made up of. Property is made up of labor. And when
Yeah.
people put their
Made up of
labor in
atoms?
order to gain,
Just FYI.
okay, I get it. You're a materialist, but like what I'm saying is that people's labor are mixed with it. And so when you attempt to justify the idea of using violence against people, or as we will say, damage of their property, what you are doing is you are enslaving them by damaging the labor that it put in order to do this. And if you allow this to continue in a Piagetian perspective, you have made them both a past and future slave to your actions. You have enslaved those individuals by not giving them restitution for the
Hey, Tom,
property
please don't
damage you have
interrupt.
done.
I
No, I want
so-
to. Fabian, you just committed a dialogue contradiction, whatever it is that you're using. Okay, I worked really hard to get these brain cells by going through political theory class, and you mentioning
You need a
like,
refund,
the
actually.
ethics of like John Locke is damaging what I've worked so hard. So please just shut
Wait,
the fuck
it just
up.
feels like you're not grasping
just
what
say what
Scott's
I'm wrong
Scott-
instead of
Scott's actually
being a
correct.
pussy.
This was
Scott's
Okay,
correct.
the last.
so three
It's
points.
Cement in golf holes, guys. Come on.
Okay, so
dismiss and pivot. All right,
all right.
I'll take that W.
Toyed.
Okay, so 3 points now. I have a political science degree. In political theory, you learn about John Locke. He's, at least in my college, he was on the required reading. He might be on yours too. Maybe you haven't gotten to that part yet. The second thing here.
Wait, hold on, Lactoid. You didn't listen to what I said. I said
not
that I
listening.
learned about John Locke.
Okay, so what about his argument about the because like wouldn't it make sense that like if I work 20 years on a car and then you destroy that car, didn't you just take away 20 years of my life from me without my consent?
And if
Yes.
you don't give him
Wait, hold on,
restitution,
hold on.
he
I
now
never
needs to
said
work
I
another 20 years to
disagreed
fix
with
that fucking
that.
car.
Yeah, so didn't you just like remove 20 years of my labor 20 years of my life that I'll never get back? You just removed that from me without my consent.
We're
True.
making people base on Enlightenment values now. Let's go.
Okay, so don't we agree that removing like having
never
people
said I
work
disagree.
having people work for years and then taking that away from them like
Yes,
without
you
their
did.
consent?
I
That
disagree.
is slavery, right? By definition, that's slavery.
That's,
Yeah, that's so
slavery?
Stupid.
What?
Don't engage with that.
Why do you
Please.
define
Please.
slavery?
Go brain dead.
Okay,
Don't do
okay.
it.
Show me where in John Locke he said that it was slavery.
Okay, well, what do you define as slavery? I define slavery as like
Show me where in your political theory class that equates to slavery.
okay. First of all, it was like
Do you
7
have
years
an
ago.
argument,
I don't.
Okay,
It was
first
seven,
of all, then
it was 7 years ago.
First of all, then he
Can
never
I finish,
did
or are you
that.
just going to talk over me?
No, he never
Right.
did that. You can't. answer
Yeah,
that
I know
question,
he.
Okay,
So
you're
I don't-
making a leap.
Wait.
okay?
I don't know. I don't know if I don't know. I don't.
Of a
okay,
well-known
stop,
philosopher
stop.
in which a lot of people respect,
Sure.
and then twisting its words into
Okay.
equating it
No,
to slavery.
no, that's not what I'm doing.
Don't
Concept
ever
is
bring
not-
up that. Oh, I
That's not-
also have a
that's not-
political
that's
science.
not- that's not what I'm.
Okay,
that's not-
order. Lactoid.
Thank you.
JHL still doesn't have an argument.
Okay. So, first of all, I have. It's been a little bit since I've read the second treatise. I don't know if he specifically used the word slavery. Regardless, it is a obvious implication of his argument. when he's saying that, like, because like, what's the difference? If I put a gun to somebody's head and make them work for 20 years and then take the car at the end, we would all agree that is slavery, right? But if someone's working on a car for 20
labor. Jesus, can you not stop?
You're saying, whoa, if I come up to, okay, we'll make it crystal clear. If I come up to somebody with like a gun and I say, go pick that field of cotton, and then like I'm holding the gun against your head and you're picking all the cotton for me, and then I take all the cotton and sell it, we would agree this is slavery, right?
It's forcing, well, yes, it would be slavery because it's forcing someone to work against their will.
Right. And so if somebody else goes out and picks, like, for 10 years, they pick a whole bunch of cotton, and then I come up with them with a gun and take all the cotton away, functionally this is the same, because they just spent 10 years picking cotton and they don't even get to keep it.
The difference, Lactoid, is the difference, Lactoid, is because
let me ask that.
The difference, Lactoid, I was talking first, so I'm going to finish my sentence. The difference, Lactoid, is that obviously in one case you have a case where a person is literally forced to work against their will.
If the holes are filled in,
that's the difference. Whereas in the other one, the person is making a choice. I was finished talking as I started talking first. So anyway, so Lactoid, the difference between these two is that the difference in this case is that in one of them, you forced a person to work against their will. The other one is you exploited their labor. These two, yes, there is an overlap in that. Even in slavery, you're exploiting labor, but the very key component with the slavery is the forced labor against their will. Whereas with the other one, the person can choose to just chalk that up as a loss, or the person can choose to work again and try to gain whatever it is. That's why this is not slavery. Do you understand the difference?
So my argument here is that it's functionally the same because at the end of the day, you would have never worked for the 10 years if you had known someone with a gun would come up to you and take away.
So it sounds like exploitation.
10 years of your labor, right? At the end of the day,
remember we said there was two.
There's no functional difference. You're simply giving it a different name.
I got you.
Functional difference.
Here, I got you. Here, there's two functional components. One of them is exploitation of labor. The other one is forced labor. Those are two components. That's what exploitation of labor.
Boring.
Exploitation.
Holy shit, you're dumb.
You're
a fucking liar.
Exploitation of one. Exploitation of labor is one function. Forced labor is the second one. So yes, when you say, hey, you're exploiting their labor, you're exploiting their labor, yes, those two things are the same. I will give you that. But the difference is when we talk about slavery, we're not talking about just exploitation of labor, we're talking about the forced labor. So you're only talking about one function. That's the problem. That's why these things are not the same. That's a different in function, right?
Yeah. I reject your differentiation. It's functionally the same.
Oh, okay.
Let me just. Final word. So,
like, hey, it's got to be quick. I got to move on. We got two other people who've been waiting, very patiently, and I've let this go on for a long time. So let's get it done, please. And then I'm going to Ty and then Corey.
I don't see a functional moral difference between putting the gun in you now and putting the gun in you 10 years down the road. If the effect is you're losing 10 years of the work you did without your consent, and that's being taken from you.
I don't see a functional difference in exploitation of labor. I agree with you.
So second of all,
J
Chow.
Exploitation of labor.
It's not the definition of exploitation. But the J Chow. The third point is, like, okay, you're saying that, and obviously in these people's opinions, they don't think the golf course should get any water, and you're saying that, okay, even if we step back from like the moral lens and we just look at this from like a utilitarian lens, the government had a hearing on this. Like the people like made their case about like reducing water usage. The golf courses came and explained the economics of like, yeah, if this happens, like we're gonna lose a bunch of money, but also 15,000 jobs might be at risk. That's 15,000 livelihoods that very well might be at risk, right? And the government said like, okay, well we can't obviously shut down all industry and all like our entire economy. We have to do this in a smart way, and this is the decision they made. Obviously, they had access to more information because they had hearings on this. They had access to more information than you or me, and they decided this. And now the people who, I mean, maybe they went to the hearings. I doubt most of them did. But now the people who don't even know shit are going there and destroying the property and causing even more damage. It's just ridiculous.
Hold on, can you let me know if the activists had the chance?
We got it.
There's no way. There's absolutely no way.
So let's go to.
Also, just real quick, that's not what exploitation
is. Ty and Corey.
Even by Marxist.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I got kicked to the back of the line a little bit ago, so I've got notes going back for a while. I definitely wanted to get on where Scott was talking about civil disobedience versus vandalism. I think there was a relevant point there. Although Fnatic shut that down for some reason, I don't know why, but I do agree with most of the points in the exchange with Fnatic and Doomy regarding that. So I think there was a little bit of material that we could have hit there, but oh well. When it comes to the drought in France, France has had a hell of a summer this year, Western Europe entirely. In the regards that it's been one of the hottest years on record. It's been one of these deals to where, yeah, everyone's running out of water. The Rhine has been drying up for the last couple of years, which is insane. So here's the issue when it comes to France. Lactoid was really on point when it comes to that France is kicking ass when it comes to climate change. They have the lowest GDP per capita emissions of any developed country. They're actually rivaling lower in developed countries. So yay for France. However, when it comes to the Paris Climate Accord, there was absolutely no way that any country was actually going to be able to succeed on that deal. It's a 50% reduction within 15 years, which would have been 2030. No. And if you have any questions of that, there's a video that I just put up on my YouTube called Green Energy, The Impossible Future. You can check that out. As far as the property damage of slavery conversation, because, that was insane. As a fellow political science person, the important part of slavery is that it's the legal ownership of a person. This doesn't actually qualify under that regard. However, do I think that's exploitation, theft, and a life-threatening violation that Scott or Lactoid are actually going after? Yeah, it's an incredibly severe thing. I'm not gonna walk away from that, and I'm glad you guys bring that up. But by definitional standing, no, this is not slavery. So thank you.
Can I disagree with that?
First of all, it's not exploitation.
We don't have any.
But
I gotta get Corey. Shut up.
Dude,
Corey,
you let fanatics scream at everyone on this panel all the time, and then you just sit there.
Holy shit.
He literally
I'll be short. I'll be short.
Okay, great. Corey, thanks.
Oh yeah, my
I'm
point
server
is,
muted.
Long gone, but just I guess to continue on what Lactoid was touched upon, just a few clarifying questions, because it seems like you are concerned with basically innocent parties being damaged, or suffering harm. And that
being attacked, being aggressed upon without their consent. Yeah,
sure. But so, and I think I take your point, but I think it matters on how far you zoom in or you zoom out in terms of a climate crisis, okay, and that a business is potentially contributing to, let's say, a drought, and there's collective consequences, as in as you alluded to, sort of on economic terms, potentially 15,000 jobs are lost if these golf course goes out of business. I'm just curious, if it was proven, or if there's strong evidence showing that as a result of this drought, there's 15,001 deaths. Is then the protest sort of justifiable?
I don't think the protest would be justifiable in terms of, again, attacking innocent people. I think that the government, I'm assuming this information is available beforehand, so they would be able to bring this to the government and be like, hey, 15,000 people are going to die if we let the golf courses still have a little bit of water.
Or yeah, or even maybe just to simplify it, if there's a body count associated with the drought, are you okay with that? At what point does there have to be any sort of body count for any sort of protest like that, innocuous protest, to take place?
I guess I would have to see what the body count is and look at the particular circumstances. I mean, obviously there's some level that would be acceptable. In the same way we accept casualties for the economic benefit of driving, right? We accept some casualties. There are people who pass away due to certain circumstances, but that doesn't mean we shut down society.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. But
if the human cost gets to a point where it's just this is clearly a situation we have to address. I mean, that could be a situation the government should look into. It doesn't look like this is actually killing anybody. It looks like people are upset that they can't wash their cars, which again, that's a waste of water, to be honest. That's even more of a waste of water than a golf course.
Sure. I'm just trying to pretty much tear apart the point. It's you are not against protest in principle, as in there's a threshold in which you're willing to give some leeway for potential some innocent parties being harmed.
No, I'm against attacking innocent people. If you're concerned about people dying, you should be protesting the government. You should be nonviolent protests seem to be more effective, so that's what you should be doing. Even if that's incorrect, then at most you could have an argument for violent protests against the government. This idea of attacking innocent people just doesn't work.
Fair enough.
Sure, great. So we're gonna move on to the next topic. We've run out of time here. Okay, so I think this is an interesting conversation.
He unserver muted me finally.
Guys, if you've been enjoying this and you're new, hit that follow button. If you haven't done so yet, hit that follow button right now. We'd love to have you. We do this all the time. Hit that follow button, make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. At Switch social chat for our social media. We got a lot of it. We got Twitter. We got Twitter and Discord. Where we do all our conversations, everything happens on Discord, TikTok, and YouTube. Like, comment, and subscribe. Okay, on to the next one. All right, so topic 2, and hopefully I can say these names correctly, but I'm sure I'm going to butcher them. But Daria Dugin, the daughter of a close Putin ally, was assassinated in a car bomb attack. Though it appears that her father, Alexander Dugin, was the target, both of them have pushed pro-invasion propaganda. Alexander has recruited militants to fight in Ukraine. People online have been celebrating the death of Daria, but is that fair? Even if a journalist is pushing disinformation to prop up a brutal war, should that make them a target of violence? And whatever your answer to that may be, who do you think are valid targets in an armed conflict? So yeah, this happened over the weekend. You can even see footage of it. Car bomb happens, just like you see in the movies. And this person lost their life, but they were indeed pushing misinformation. And their father, who again seems to be the actual target, was involved in in that breakaway region of Donetsk, I believe it was. Trying to put in militants, pro-Russian militants there to help with that rebellion and, again, fight Ukraine. So again, are either of them valid targets in this, or is it just wrong nonetheless? Let's go to Wick.
So yeah, this is something I've been observing over the weekend, and it's kind of triggered me a little bit, and I have some really strong feelings on that. And I want to try to be as clear as possible when I say this, that there is a stronger case when it comes to the father, Alexander Dugin here. He has been heavily involved. He's been posted as a spiritual advisor of Putin, Putin's brain, as they say. He's actively worked on helping to plan the annexation of Crimea back in 2014. And also during that time period, he was in direct contact with a lot of separatist, Russian-planted separatist militias in the contested regions of Ukraine. I'll mispronounce them if I try to pronounce them, but you know where, the DPR, LPR areas. Even then, though, there is a question of, do we target planners? Do we target propagandists? Are they valid war targets? And even if we can say that he might be, his daughter absolutely is not. Now, keep in mind, I'm not running cover for the daughter here. She was part of a propaganda machine that led to real world violence and real world harm, right? But there is a line, right? We should not be celebrating the death of journalists, even horrific and fascist journalists. They're just not valid targets. We don't kill journalists, gang. That's a Putin thing. And there's evidence to suggest that this was a false flag operation, that Putin arranged this. And we can look at the fact that 2 weeks prior to this bombing, the cameras were disabled to the parking lot where they believe this bomb was planted. Not cut or anything, but disabled. They actively took them off of commission, right? And we can look at some other evidence to suggest this. We'll get into it during the panel. I won't go really deep into here. That so if you have been celebrating the death of Daria Dugin, and this you're playing into Putin's hands. Putin thanks you for your service here, and so we really got to draw a hard line where we're not okay with just killing journalists. That's not a world I want to live in. Anyway, that's my take.
All right, Scott.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're well within your rights to celebrate the death of anybody for whatever reason. I don't think that's inherently an act of aggression. It might be a shitty thing to do. I don't think it's necessarily good to celebrate anybody's death. Certainly not when this is likely a kind of a big sign of escalation, right? Like we're already kind of in a situation where there are talks about NATO, whether or not they want to get involved and things of that nature. You know, we don't want to see an escalation of this conflict. And this is absolutely an escalation of this conflict. Now, the FSB are saying, you know, that these were Ukrainian spies that did it and that they have evidence, yet they haven't shown the evidence of like the license plate number or any CCTV footage. You know, Ukraine is saying that they spoke, you know, to opposition leader. Oh God, I don't even want to try and pronounce Russian names. Ponomarev, right? And you know, and he's saying that there's 16,000 Russian National Army people and 1,000 people that are combatants. Now, the Russian National Army thing seems kind of sus to me. I don't know that I buy it. It seems more likely that it could have been Ukrainian spies, but I don't fucking know. It could have been the West doing this shit. There's a lot of players involved, and I don't really know who did this. But I think it's important to know that depending upon who did this really does change whether or not this is justifiable, right? As far if you know, Russian National Army, they feel if they're a real organization at all, that you know that there is a criminal enterprise that has taken away their right of democracy and that is actively fighting, and they say that they will do everything in their power to not target civilians in any way, shape, or form. And that's not really terrorism at that point if they're actively fighting against an illegitimate Russian state that is getting them involved in war and empires. That being said, innocent bystanders do happen, and I do think restitution has to be paid, even in war, for innocent bystanders, because at the end of the day, your actions, even if indirectly, led to the death of people that were innocent. And while you may say, well, Daria Dugin is not innocent because she's a propagandist in some way, I don't know that you can prove aggression from her unless she did, you know, work with Erdogan in the CIA situation, or whether or not the calls for invasion, they're really nebulous. You know, working with organizations to try and get troops to defend Russian interests in the Donbass region is to call that like explicitly an act of aggression is really just to say that speech is aggression at that point. And I don't see how you can make that justification. So it's a complex situation, but those are kind of my positions. I think if the Russian National Army is true, I think they are probably justified defensively in using this violence as a means of protecting themselves and their nation against an illegitimate oppressive state. But I don't think anybody should cheer for this situation getting worse.
Thank you. Chao.
Yeah, so first, I think the celebration that I've witnessed, I was watching earlier today, a DW video, and in the comments section were full of jokes about, oh, that poor car, that car had to be a casualty. Those car parts that had to be touched by Russian investigators. What a poor Toyota. I'm worried about that because it shows the cruel side and like the darkness of humanity, and how like emotions could get us to kind of like think that like, you know, this kind of action is something that like should have been done or and whatnot. And in regards to whether or not Alexander or Daria Dugina are the valid targets, short answer is I don't think so. They're not militants. They're not on the battlefield. And the media is like trying to, this is really concerning. They're trying to paint Alexander as like this mastermind behind Putin's foreign policy goals, his imperial ambitions, and that he was like the grand architect to the 2014 invasion of Crimea, which I think is well overstated in the fact that he has no connections to the Kremlin. I think he probably has like some contacts to the legislative body of Russia. That I saw that on his Wikipedia page, but to say that like he is like some sort of a government official or has ties to any of the government, the Kremlin, is well overstated. And he's more so of a private citizen with a lot of influence, a philosopher, and very, very questionable takes. I don't think they're valid targets. This is not really like some political assassination. This was murder, and this was terrorism. I would put that in that book. But I guess that also does depend on, well, who was responsible. And the group that has come up, I think just today, to take credibility for this was the National Republican Army. I think that's what Fabian was talking about before. And Russia has insinuated that it was Ukrainian special operations. I think also Russia doing this to themselves is also within the realm of possibility. Something that we all should know is that public opinion in Russia is kind of being challenged when it comes to this war. Most Russians, I saw maybe like last week, most Russians want a peace treaty in order to end this, and that's not good for Putin, because him and his cronies, they want this to last for a long time until they achieve their goals. And so then if they were to turn that propaganda machine and get the Russian people to be like, hey, this happened in our land against this person, this was a casualty, and like I'm pretty sure they're blasting this all over throughout their media, that's probably going to rile up their public opinion back to supporting the war and continuing the fight. And so then is like, are people like necessarily hating on Alexander and Daria? Is that like feeding into Putin's master plan? If that is the case, probably not. Like, you're not getting tricked. It was going to happen anyways, regardless of how you feel about it. But it is totally within the realm of possibility.
Okay. All right. Fanatic.
Yeah, I'm listen. It's one of those situations where I can understand, like, morally, where it seems kind of awful to be cheering for someone's death. There was a person who died recently that I thought was incredibly harmful. It was Kevin Samuels. And I found myself really struggling, right? Because there's a part of me that felt like, man, this guy is literally harmful to Black people, specifically harmful to young Black boys. And I felt like, obviously, there's already a struggle, like, for want of role models within the Black community and things like that. And I feel like a person like assuming that role and like misguiding a bunch of young men for his own personal gain was really, really gross to me. But then at the same time, it's like, I think it's pretty immoral to like glory in your enemy's death in that sense. And so I found myself really conflicted. Similarly, I would imagine, glorying in these people's death is gross, but I can understand other people having, like, who are really invested in this war or invested in following and keeping up with it and seeing like, hey, these people are largely responsible for a bunch of propaganda that we can say is taking countless lives in Ukraine. If that's the case, I can understand why they would do that. Again, it's going to be up to them whether or not their moral system allows them to do it. Do I think there's ever a line where we can start like targeting people? I wouldn't say just because a person isn't in the actual military that they can't be responsible. Someone like Tucker Carlson isn't in the military, but you could easily tie him towards something like Great Replacement. Lauren Southern, you could tie her to Great Replacement stuff. The thing that she did on that boat, like with the flare and all that nonsense. Like you can see like people can be responsible for something without being directly involved in some sort of way. So it's hard for me to just say, oh, just because they're not in the military that they can't be involved. I think that's crazy. So yeah, I would say I mean I can understand the conflict. I don't have a strong enough sense because I haven't followed this closely enough.
Are you saying it's okay to blow these people up?
Oh,
Not what he said.
you all
That's not what he
discussed
said.
that.
If you're not listening to me, Wick, don't engage with me. You're an idiot.
Corey.
Just put that.
You're such an idiot.
I don't have. I echo many of the same sentiments that Scott and Wick and Fnatic and Jay Chow just said in terms, at least when it comes explicitly to celebrating someone's death. As Fnatic just said, I can find it understandable, but overall, pretty much in any context, I think it's pretty despicable. I think probably the example that most readily comes to mind is, Rush Limbaugh. They passed away. There was a clear celebration by a certain demographic that even though I'm a crazy radical
I love
leftist,
this fucking song.
I did not celebrate Rush Limbaugh's death.
Asian
as much as I
inspired
find them a
lo-fi is
despicable,
fucking dope.
awful, terrible human being. That is
It's much
probably
better
an
than these
overall good
takes.
that they passed away. But
I'm really just waiting for Tiberius D.
Their despicableness ends with them passing away. So I see no.
No, he's
reason
actually
to
going to know what the
celebrate.
fuck he's talking about.
But I understand why you're smiling, Prime, in terms of like there's a whole bunch of secondary awfulness as a result of Rush Limbaugh. But once someone has died, like they themselves, their ability to do despicable things is over and done with. And so I think you could just like move on. but I can understand why some people would celebrate. I just think like, yeah, it's not a good thing. And in terms of like this individual, Daria Dugina being a target, as well as the other person, Alexander, being a target, like I sort of echo many of the same things that Jay Chow mentioned in terms of like, yeah, it's probably militants who should be targeted overall. But as Fnatic alluded to, like, I don't know if there's it's in my mind, but I'm not an expert. There's no clear line of like what makes a militant and what doesn't make a militant. And it's not always clear that militants exist wherever there is conflict. And so I think it's pretty gray. But do I think Daria Dugina should have been a target? Based off what I know, which is admittedly limited, it doesn't seem like they should have been a target. So to Wick's point, if they were in fact a journalist, even though a despicable journalist, I don't think that's enough justification for them to be a target. And that's it for now.
Thank you. Kai.
Yeah, so I do have quite a bit here, but I'll rapid fire this off pretty quick. Number one, when it comes to Dugin himself, who he is as far as his attachments to the Kremlin is a little bit questionable. There is a conversation on if he is a member of what they call the Silviki, or I can't pronounce that, it's Russian. But the long story short is that there is a cadre of intellectuals that kind of help guide Russia from the back end. These are kind of the people who weren't affiliated with the KGB, but kind of help out a lot. Anyway, he is a political and geopolitical strategist for the Russians, and he is one of the progenitors of what they call the world island theory, which is, I'll have to talk about that at a later point. You can feel free to ask. But the long and the short here is that these are one of the folks that guides intellectually what the ideas of Russia is and where it needs to go. Do I think that he probably has a hand in the whole war and how to play it? Yes. The entire theory that he put forward means that Russia has to control the greater scape of Eurasia to be a successful power. And to say that he's complicit, I would not go with. Or I'm sorry, to say that he isn't complicit, I wouldn't go with. His daughter, I have no idea.
Silver.
I just don't. Like, she could absolutely be complicit, but it's Russia. They literally kill their political opponents. So for all I know, this is one of those deals where you just go along to get along, and she may have died because of it. When it comes to who did it, this is actually the scarier part. If it actually is anti-Putin forces and a domestic thing, that's actually the better option. Because what concerns me right now is that if the Ukrainians did it and the Russians can openly claim it, they can formally enact a declaration of war upon Ukraine and enact a general mobilization. Because what no one has been talking about in the Ukrainian war right now is that the Russians are blatantly losing at this point. They are bleeding dry both in equipment and manpower, and they cannot enact the states of emergency that they need for a general mobilization to turn the tide. And so if this actually is Ukrainian or the Russians start claiming it is, this turns the tide of the war. If it doesn't and we actually get a domestic situation, not only does that mean a good pill for the Ukrainians, but also means that there's a lot more dissension within the Russians that we thought, which means that we could actually see the Putin government be a lot less stable than a lot of people gave it credit for. So long and the short here, there's a lot of details. Feel free to ask me questions.
Lactoid.
Yeah, I think Russia might have done it. You can't trust these communists. They're just completely unreliable. They lie constantly. They're empires of lies. That's all they know how to build. 1984, check it out. So if the Ukrainians actually did it, I think it's morally wrong. It's clear that they were trying to target him. They weren't trying to target her. He is like a political philosopher, and he does have these kind of Eurasianist, somewhat fascist beliefs that are pretty reprehensible when you take a look at them. And obviously he's a bad person, just in terms of what he's advocating for. I think his moral compass is flawed. But, I wouldn't be in favor of attacking an American citizen for speaking their mind. And so I also am not in favor of attacking anybody for speaking their mind. He was simply expressing himself. And his daughter, although it appears to be she was not the intended target, even if it had killed him, I don't think it would have been justified. Now, if it was a target against a military installation or against somebody who's actually part of the government, then that could be something. It is questionable whether or not he actually has that much influence over Putin. Putin's brain is the nickname that some Western analysts have given him. But when you actually take a look at his credentials, he's kind of just like a university professor who's kind of crazy. So, yeah, I also echo the sentiment that I really hope that Ukraine didn't do it, because if they did, and Russia does use this as justification to mobilize then we're going to have to give Ukraine a whole lot more weapons.
Okay, DB.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep, there we go.
I think this idea that we shouldn't celebrate when people die is kind of silly. I don't know where it comes from, to be honest. But there are plenty of people that I think we'd be better off without. When serial killers die in prison, the only thing I'm sad about is they didn't die 30 years ago when they were arrested. Right? There are plenty of people on the planet right now, Putin included. When Putin dies, I'm going to be very fucking happy. I think it'd be a good step forward for the planet. Right? I think we'd be much better off without him. Right? So I don't understand this like fucking hand-wringing about celebrating the deaths of terrible people that are doing awful things on the planet. Like, that's fucking strange. That being said, I think that it actually, if you have a person who's a propagandist, who's pushing policies or supporting a war effort or pushing misinformation about what's going on during an active war where God knows how many civilians are dying, I think this person is absolutely a legitimate target, right? Wars are fought on much more than just like the battlefield, right? So I think we all know that. So, you know, just because she's technically a private citizen, she made herself a combatant in this, like, the ideological war and the push toward this war that is harming thousands of people, probably hundreds of thousands of people, when she started pushing the misinformation, right? So yeah, fuck her. I think it's a good thing she's dead, and I hope they get the other guy.
So, okay. Yeah, we cannot have this be the line, right? That anyone who simply supports the acts of a state is a valid target. And like when you make the gray area and who's responsible, and you say things like, well, maybe Tucker Carlson is directly responsible for these things, it makes it okay to target these people. That's what you're saying, whether you realize it or not, right? That is exactly what you were saying. It's what people were hearing.
I realize the consequences of everything I'm saying.
So when it comes down, I understand. But what I'm saying here is that when we do these things, when we make it okay to target civilians, right? That we cede the moral high ground. And one of the reasons when it comes to the celebration of death that I worry in this case is because I was an adult right after 9/11, right? Like, I was actually old enough to kind of remember what happened, and the bloodthirstiness that the people had towards Muslims and anyone from the Middle East was scary. It was scary. And I'm seeing echoes of that now when it comes to celebrating the death of Russian citizens, right? Like, yeah, they're going to get what they deserve. The only good Russian's a dead Russian type of deal. And this kind of bloodthirstiness can lead to some really yikesy, wicked stuff. And look, when it comes to Daria, yikesy. When it comes to Daria, there's no question she was involved in the propaganda machine of Putin, right? No question. She's been involved. She went to Mariupol, took pictures to try to kind of frame it as positive for what the Russians did. Like, the Russians were just defending their homeland and things like that. She's obviously a propagandist. Okay, no question about that. But we cannot make it okay to target propagandists and journalists. Because
we're not making it okay. It's just okay, right? So if prior to fucking World War II, someone had taken out Goebbels or whatever the fuck however the fuck you pronounce his name, I think that would have been a good thing. That would have been totally fine, right? I don't think you need to be literally fighting on the battlefield to be a target, a legitimate target.
No, you can, like, if they were to bomb
or an ideological effort, right?
Look, if they were to bomb like a weapons manufacturing plant, right? Like, and there happen to be workers
or
inside,
kill the guy that's producing and pushing an ideology that other people are latching onto.
Because killing that person doesn't kill the ideology, right?
It kills him as an effective communicator.
Ideas are bulletproof.
It kills an effective communicator of this ideology. It absolutely does.
What it does is it creates a martyr. And like, when we talk about the false flag operation, right? We talk about the possibility, and I want to be clear, it's a possibility, right? We don't know at this point. And I
mean, it's probably not, but it's a possibility, yeah.
But it's a possibility. But it has a lot of good. Russia wants this to happen. They are salivating over this to happen because they will allow them to put their boot on their citizens in a way.
Wait,
like,
so if Ukrainians
started
going into Russia and committing terrorist acts, quote unquote, right, against private companies, against civilians,
or bombing.
Right, so you might say, hey, Russia wants this. Russia wants this because, you know, it's gonna solidify support for the war because now civilians in Russia are getting killed. Okay, I understand that, and you're right, but On the other end, you have Russia invading a country, murdering God knows how many civilians, committing war crimes. So it's totally reasonable for people experiencing that to say, hey, fuck you, you're supporting this country, so I'm going to go kill you in your country.
Dude,
That seems
Brother, you know, Americans celebrating this,
I
like,
want
I
to
want
ask
to
you a
ask a
question.
clarifying
celebrate
question. I just want to ask you a clarifying question to see where your line is. Do you think in a time of war, anti-war protesters and anti-war journalists that are actively trying to fight the state to make sure that the state can't win the war and turn the tide to force them to capitulate, do you think that it is morally right or wrong for the state to take those people out for fighting against what is, they believe, a justified war?
It'd depend on the context, but I can easily imagine a situation in which that would be totally justifiable and moral to do.
So where is your line in terms of speech where someone is an enemy? Is it just the fact that she's Russian? Is it just justified for any Ukrainian to kill any Russian?
She's a propagandist pushing misinformation about the war effort, and including saying that pushing misinformation about the Russian war crimes that they are committing all over the fucking all over fucking Ukraine, being staged, right? This is not true.
Is it the fact that she's... Hold on. You said, so your justification that makes it different, right, is you've already said it would be justified to kill the war protester and it would be justified to kill the propagandist on behalf of the state. So the distinction then is must there be some form of misinformation? Is it not okay if a person is legitimately espousing their beliefs, but it is okay if they're lying on behalf of another party? Is that the difference? Where's the difference? Where's the line?
No, hold on. So there is no line, but I just wanted to make it clear that she wasn't just like.
Okay.
No, wait, hold on. Listen. To be clear, that she wasn't just like an innocent journalist, right? That you guys are pinning her out to be. She was literally a fucking propagandist, an active, intentional participant in a war, right? Whether or not she was on the battlefield, she was participating in this war effort. Right, so this makes her a legitimate target. Now, please, listen.
That is not
I'm not done. I'm not done.
all.
I can draw the line. Please, I'm not done.
Yeah,
Okay,
please draw the line for me because you haven't yet.
Okay. So, so for me, it'd be actually, I think I did kind of just draw the line. That she's intentionally, actively participating in the war effort toward a certain end. They can say, hey, this would justify somebody killing me, for example. If I'm pushing a policy,
Putin could kill you. And you would have to admit that you were a justified hard target or soft
well,
target.
this is the distinction. I don't believe in like objective morality. I can see from his perspective, it is totally reasonable to kill people that are advocating for policies or action against Russia. Absolutely, it is. Right. So for me, as somebody who's on this side of the conflict, right, and doesn't like that Russia's invading this country, and I see a person in Russia pushing propaganda that is furthering the war effort there, that is harming people that I don't want to be harmed, I would say absolutely, hey, fuck you.
Okay.
You don't get to be alive.
So just to reiterate, right? You said that you could do the same against protesters. You said that you could do the same against somebody like yourself for fighting against those things. And you say that you don't believe in objective morality, but you also claim to be a moral subjectivist and you don't care whether or not it has to be logically grounded. And so your entire position,
I think it is absolutely logical.
Right. Your entire position it's not, but it's okay. Your entire position thus far is might makes right. And so I don't really understand why you're engaging in the morality of it whatsoever anyways, because you've already said, quote, there is no line. So you're an immoral piece of shit murderer that will kill anybody so long as it benefits yourself and your own fifis or the interests of your people.
It's not might that makes it right. It's my own subjective preferences, right? That I've learned through my experiences, my upbringings. Like that's just I don't have like a tablet I can point to say, hey, this is objectively right.
So if you're
subjectively
a moral subjectivist, all standards,
but
even
knowing
engage
that this
in
is
the moral argument?
And no, because I think
you
it's
have
silly.
No argument. You might as well be a postmodernist.
I think even by your own standards, it's illogical to call it immoral, right? So, please, I think that
no, it's not. It's morally unjustified.
Please stop. So, yeah, according to you, so I think that the line here, right, is for some reason it seems like some of you believe that so long as you don't step foot on a battlefield even if you are pushing propaganda, even if you're driving toward a support for a war effort that is killing people actively, you still get to call yourself a civilian. You still get to say, "Hey, I'm just an innocent person. Oh God, don't hurt me." I think there's absolutely this person is absolutely a legitimate target, and what makes him legitimate is their participation in this war effort, and what makes them a good target, right? For a person who doesn't like that, it's just how effective they are. So if the person on the other side of this has said, "Hey, she's effective enough at pushing this propaganda that we want to get rid of her because she's hurting our people," then hey, that's the line. I think it's totally fine. Go for it.
Yeah,
No,
you didn't really
in
get in
fact,
on create a
she
line.
is not an effective target at all.
According to
really,
who?
I have a tough hypothetical, Doobie. So the Eurasianist Party has a youth wing, that's made up of children. So if you had a school bus full of like a bunch of these Eurasianist children, let's say like 20 of like 7-year-olds, and they're all like driving around handing out pamphlets with misinformation that's like in favor of the Ukraine war, and the Ukrainian military like specifically targeted the school bus to blow up the children, you think that'd be justified, or do you think it's a little bit extreme?
From their perspective, sure.
Do you think it would be justified?
No, I'm in support of the. I support Ukraine, right? So I wouldn't think that.
No. Wait. You missed that. I think you may have misunderstood.
Yeah, maybe I misread you.
Okay, so the Eurasianist Party is the party that this daughter and her father belong to. It has this idea of like a Eurasian superstate that they're trying to create. Okay.
Yeah.
And I looked into this party before this panel. That party has a youth wing made up of children. A lot of these fucking crazy parties have youth wings, right? Even a lot of regular parties have youth wings, but like this is kind of similar to like Hitler or whatever. And there's like 6 or 7-year-olds who are like part of this, right? And so my question for you is, you said it's perfectly fine for them to target these propagandists. And so if there was a school bus full of these Eurasianist youths that were going around Russia handing out pamphlets in favor of invading Ukraine, and as a result, Ukraine targeted that school bus, would you be okay with that?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Oh, no, personally, I wouldn't be okay with that. I think it'd make much more sense to target the people that are at the head of that, youth group, or even the officials the people that are printing out the flyers for them, etc., and driving them around. I think it's reasonable to target that guy. That's weird. I don't think it's reasonable to target children.
Okay, we found a line. We found a line. So the line here is
kill baby Hitler.
Yeah, you can't target children.
You would let Hitler grow up.
You can't target children for propagandizing people, but you can target adults. Is that your
I would target the people that are propagandizing children. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, but the children here are like fully propagandized, and they're going around handing out pamphlets. You can kill the
adults.
Is this a surprising line? Did you
kill
the
adults?
They're in Russia. They're in Russia. How are you going to re-educate them?
You kill the adults in charge, and then you educate the children.
They're in Russia. How are you going to?
Put them with somebody that won't make them like Russian Nazis.
You would have to invade Russia.
But I don't understand why did we assume that Doobie would say otherwise, that like he'd be in favor of like bombing a school bus full of children?
It's because they don't know how to actually debate. They don't know how to actually get to positions. It's really
whatever. Fanatic, you can remember what you said 2 minutes after you said it. You're a fucking moron.
Wait. People, hold on. Wait.
Prime. As much as I'm enjoying the toxicity here, like I have some points to make, and
that's what I wanted to hear.
I'm about to have some fucking aneurysms. All right, three things here. Number one is that this core conversation that Doobie and Lactoid and all are getting around is like the difference between macro and micro morality and how they interface. As an example, we've talked about Cuba and the embargo on the show once before, or maybe on somebody else's panel, but it's like, all right, if we hate a government but we don't have a problem with the people, what's the right thing to do? Do you punish the government because you punish the people too? And the same thing happens vice versa. If you have a problem with Donald Trump, but he's the sitting president and you hurt him, do you hurt the United States? Now, I'm not trying to put this in like an affirmative, because when it comes to this thing, my ethical calculator fucking explodes in my head. I don't know what the right thing to do is 90% of the time on these things, because it's really fucking muddy, because you're dealing with a number of principles that will clash, because you're dealing with people as an individual versus people as collective. And so I'll affirm this. Doobie is using the compliance doctrine here. Those who are complicit within the system largely are responsible for it. I'm not going to say that I agree or disagree with that, but he's taking a normal type that is usually argued in this kind of thing. The last part, when it comes to the death of people, even if they are my enemies, I actually really like the part or the argument of to celebrate that does come off to me as very bloodthirsty. I remember when Osama bin Laden died. I was 19. I remember 10 years of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. A lot of people were very happy. I literally just looked in myself and said, why is it that my fellow Americans really ring off as being as celebratory of death as the people we just killed? Like, that actually bothers me on a level. I will never.
I think it's okay to be bloodthirsty sometimes. I think there are times where it's okay, where it's totally warranted.
Children?
Okay, wait. So
okay?
look, I'll reply to that real quick because it's actually something I want to talk about. Doobie, I actually respect that point. I really do. The problem is for me is that being okay with being bloodthirsty scares the hell out of me, because in the event that I would get used to it, I don't know if I would trust myself to ever be moral again. So there's a level where if it's just like I'll put it this way.
Do you think it's bloodthirsty for me to say that I want literally every fucking serial killer, rapist, child molester, piece of shit to be dead? I want them all dead, and I'd celebrate if they died. Yeah, it's bloodthirsty, I guess. I want them dead. I'd celebrate their deaths. But I mean, I think it's fine. I think it's totally reasonable.
But that's a desire, right? Like you can't.
Yeah, we're moving
say
into
that
the.
a desire is
and when they do die, I do celebrate it. I think it's a good thing.
Well,
right,
so
but even that action
like,
isn't unjustifiable. What's unjustifiable is the acts of aggression against another individual or their persons or property.
No.
When you celebrate as an individual the death of somebody, like, you can have whatever moral opinion you want about that, but there's no act of aggression in saying "ding dong, the witch is dead, the wicked witch
It's
of the west
tacky
is dead."
though. It's very tacky.
Yeah, like again, it seems like we're just asking the question, what is celebration? As in, like, you brought up like the desire for like all serial killers like to die. Like, I think we're all on the same page. Like, I don't know that we have a huge
lot of
problem
people in this panel are cocks. I wouldn't believe that.
Well, sure, fine, fair enough.
I have a
But
different way,
using my original example of like Rush Limbaugh, like, I didn't lose any sleep over them passing, and like I was overall like satisfied that they passed away. But did I like devote a 10-hour Twitch stream to like for a dance party for celebrating Rush Limbaugh? That's different. As in, like, I can be okay with someone passing and dying, and maybe even having some sort of desire that they no longer exist in the world.
This is super privileged. This is like the most privileged thing in the fucking world.
Oh, don't.
Right? So if you were talking, it absolutely is, right? Because you guys maybe have some empathy issues.
So why you
can't put yourselves in the feet? You can't put yourself in the shoes of a victim here.
No, I would say you don't have the empathy.
I do have empathy. I totally understand. Hey, maybe they got to this place where they're murdering people or doing whatever the fuck because they had a terrible life experience, or they have mental health issues, yada yada yada. I don't give a fuck, right? That's fine. They did terrible things, so they deserve to die. And as somebody if somebody were like victimized by these people, or just like mentally like distressed by their fucking existence and the terrible things they did, then hey, I think it's totally fine for me to say, hey, fuck you. You died. I'm happy you died, and maybe I'm gonna cut a cake over it. I think if I were like in Jim Crow South, right, as a brown man that I am, right, and the fucking head of the local KKK that's been fucking up my community, harassing everybody for years, died, I'd be fucking happy. I might even throw a party over it. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
So
I agree. There's nothing morally wrong with that.
So I don't hide my power level here. When Rush Limbaugh, I'm not sure how long the stream was, but we did delegate the stream to his death, and we did celebrate. I think Dippy might.
Yeah, but Al Rushbaugh did nothing wrong. Here, let's go.
Yeah, the last Prime K's open panel.
That was one of those cases where I really felt like I wasn't a big fan of him.
Open panel.
At the same time, I definitely felt like it was kind of like that. It was like I know. I haven't been talking this entire topic. Suck. All right, that's all I gotta say.
God.
Anyway, so yeah, I if like when it came to like Kevin Samuels, that was
You're
another
like a fucking
person where it's
petulant
like,
child.
I know it's shut your mouth.
The maturity level of a toddler.
That was another person that I personally didn't really like. Again, I didn't respect him, and so like when like all of the statements that you were giving, because you had a pretty big debate stream over like whether or not he was a person that should be like how toxic he was for the Black community. I agreed with all of your positions. I really did. but I still felt like it was pretty problematic to like make fun of the person's death. But something I've been considering like this whole time is like, where do I get this concept from? And I know that like there's plenty of scriptures where they talk about like not glorying in your enemies and things like that. But then at the same time, I think about the children of Israel in the Bible and like how many times they they would like glory over they wrote songs about like the death of Goliath and about venerating David and different people who like were responsible for like those kinds of things. So it does seem like maybe there might be some sort of place. I'm trying to like think about like deontologically whether or not it's a wrong thing to do or not. Now that if the Bible says it's okay, then it's okay. So then maybe these people might be okay to celebrate it. I just got to do more thinking.
So one of the
that's
problems
crazy.
with celebrating death, right? Even the death of your enemies, even if you feel like, and I want to be clear, publicly celebrating. If you have a party and no one knows about it, whatever, it doesn't matter, right? But when we talk about publicly celebrating the death of our enemies, we understand when we do that on public platforms where other people can see it, it does have an effect on people's opinions of us and those we represent. Like we are representatives of ideologies, even if it's very small, even if it's very little, even if there's almost no repercussions when you take these things at scale, right? Like it does drive people away from you, right? It does drive people away
Well, who
from
cares?
whatever you're trying to advocate for. So when people like Rush Limbaugh, and we're saying people who liked Rush Limbaugh, who are like, I don't know much about him, but I listened to his show a couple times. My dad listened to him a lot, right? And they see your ass pissing on his grave and things like that. They're gonna be like, what a terrible person. I never want to support them. And so you've actively done harm
cares?
to your cause. You've actively
Who
harmed your
cares?
cause.
Well, like that's not.
You
come
may
on,
not
man.
care,
The
but
optics.
us, as
No,
someone who
sorry.
does
I'm
care
sorry.
about
It's
Like
the
I think this is a dumb thing to be
like
worried about right now. Like,
No, it's not. Prime. It's about
so
optics.
Literally built
so,
into your
oh
topic.
no, I mean, if look, the point
You
of
could
the
lose public
question.
support.
The
Policy
point
making.
of the
Support
question.
matters
Oh
when
my
it
God!
comes to
Shut up!
wars.
Shut up! Hold on! Shut up! Am I talking? I think I was talking. I was talking, correct? Thank you. So when looking at the question is about targets, right? Like is this a valid target? I think that's the most interesting part of this. We have an individual who did not engage in direct combat, right? So there are people who help war efforts, right? Like you're not a target, you're not a militant, but there are people who assist in a war effort and who may be crucial in that war effort, who may be crucial within a regime, right? Now I don't think the woman who died was crucial or anything, to be very clear. But there are people who never take up a gun. Like it would seem weird to say that those individuals, like maybe like the money man, right? Like the finance minister, for the enemy, that person would be exempt as a military target. Like why? Like if you take this person out, you help cripple. Like assuming if it all vested on one person, but if you help cripple their effort, right? They can't get the funds to power their military. So why wouldn't we do that? Would people agree that like a finance minister would be an acceptable
No.
target?
No.
Can I address this real quick?
Sure.
So he
I'll
is an
next.
And then
acceptable
Ty,
target.
and then
Sure.
Tichao.
He is an acceptable target for sanctions and things like that. Tools that other than just killing him, right? Because if we like draw that line far enough back that anyone who provides any kind of support to the war effort is a valid target. Like I'll give you an example or a hypothetical if you'll indulge me for a minute. Putin's wife, right? Putin's wife, who loves and supports him, provides him all sorts of comfort that he needs. If we took her out, he would not have that release of stress anymore. He would not have, the same kind of like, and it would cripple the war effort. If that was true,
No,
would
it
you say
wouldn't.
it's okay?
No,
if it
I'm
was-
sorry. Wait. That's a dumb
So
example.
ridiculous.
Come
That
on,
is a
I gave
stupid
you
example.
that,
Thank
and
God.
Man, you're a
the-
stupid man.
Dude, I
Get
gave you the
You
finance
didn't give me
minister.
okay. So
right?
and I told you
What about
the
the guy who
sanctions
makes his
are
coffee, Brian?
Yeah, like what about the guy who makes his
Ridiculous.
coffee? Like,
Fanatic.
like
You're a
Putin is
child.
not right when he
Great.
doesn't get his coffee,
Comedy.
right? And
You're
so he's not going to
clown.
make the
You're
best
straight up
decisions.
clown,
And
dude.
so yeah, he's gonna it's gonna cripple the war effort. Like what? No, like
What
if
I'm
it
talking
does?
about
Funny.
people who are
Well, you got the whole
guy.
shot
Hey,
laughing.
knock it off. Thanks. I'm talking about individuals who are crucial to the infrastructure of a regime, right? I'm starting there. We can expand out from there, but I'm starting there. A finance minister, and again, assuming that no one else could take up the job, right? But hold the hypothetical. But a finance minister is a crucial person within the regime. They do a lot. They help power the war machine in and of itself. Right? It's like that does not compare to like who the fuck Putin's sticking his dick into, right? Not quite on the same level. So give me an example there that works.
I can explain.
You want to?
So the reason I want to explain this is that you can't use subjective assessments of like what is an appropriate level of involvement that then justifies the person as a hard target that you can kill, right? So when you say the finance minister that is actively engaged in trade to, let's say, bring money from one place in to bring weapons to another place, unless they are directly ordering troop movements in some regard, right? Like their actions are directly doing these things. There's no difference between the finance minister that's helping fund the war and the construction worker who builds the tank. There's no difference between his secretary that helps give him coffee, like as other people were saying, right? In order to pep him up so that he can continue his job better. What you have done by saying someone has not committed a direct act of aggression, which is actually shoot, actually kill, actually like move the troops and give the orders that move those things around. The moment that you say the financier or the person that ideologically supports, what you have done is you've taken every person that hasn't actively fought to the best of their ability to stop the war at their own risk of life and said that they are a hard target. And now there's no difference between a civilian and the financier other than the subjective line that you kind of like build somewhere that says this is more involved.
Like, you legitimately not understand this?
That's a dumb fuck argument, right? So, well, first of all, I think a factory,
we'll argue against it instead of just being insulting.
Excuse me, shut up. I think a factory is a valid. Shut up, please. Thank you. I'm talking.
Bro, what's the dude? Shut up so we can talk. God.
So I think that a factory certainly is a valid target for war. Absolutely. A weapons factory? Yeah, we do that all the time. The U.S. does that all the time. Oh, there's a weapon factory here. We're going to bomb that, right? And I would absolutely prefer to bomb it when there are not factory workers in that factory. Right? I would want an empty factory. But in war, people like that wouldn't be. I wouldn't call that a hard target. I'm not even sure how we're defining that yet. But like I would call it a valid target. Would be a factory
is the factory worker.
The factory manager is not.
And I would love for those people to be outside the factory. I've already stated that. And then
but
beyond
we do
that,
this already.
We do this already. To pretend that the economic minister is like on the same scale as just a construction worker, that these two things are the same, absolutely not. There's a thing called scale. There's a thing called scale, right? You get that? That some people have a bigger impact and a crucial impact, which is what I said from the very beginning. Crucial to the regime. The factory worker is not crucial to the regime. Okay? So
but listen,
if you take out the finance minister and damage their ability to power their war machine, then yeah, that seems like a no-brainer. And that seems like a valid... sorry, I'll say that other point for later, but go ahead.
No, but so it's really important, the distinction here. The factory is a hard target. The factory worker isn't. We've done this several times in Syria, both under the Obama administration and the Trump administration, where we've said in retaliation for what you've done, we're going to bomb this airfield or this airstrip. You have 12 hours to evacuate, right? Because what we are doing is we are targeting the weapons and the material things that can be used against us, but not the factory worker or the civilian that isn't that same target. The problem with you saying scale is now you have to define everything. Now you have to define what is crucial. What does that mean? And where that line is drawn is subjective, and you can start to use
everything
your own
rational.
Right, but you can start exactly. You just hit the nail on the head. Once you start to define everything as subjective, that means that you can rationalize violence and aggression towards other people all the way down the line. And you say, well, that's absurd to say that it can be rationalized that way, but you yourself made the own justification that you could indeed do that.
And it
Well,
actually
Prime,
had
I
now
think
you
that's
justify
exactly
war
where the
crimes.
problem comes in. Prime. So look, I think this is, and it's great. You've already laid it out like really, really
Thank you.
perfectly. Like, yes, you can say that something is subjective, but just because you say something is subjective, that doesn't mean now that we have to assume that a bad actor is going to take this subjective nature of it. That doesn't mean that the person, that a bad actor is going to take the subjective nature of something and then say something that's completely ridiculous and heinous that you don't agree with. As long as you said, yes, like there are degrees, there are scales, and obviously we don't have to go into the very specifics of, well, the exact scale is exactly this perfect thing. It's just there's a scale, and once you find that scale and you reach it, then you can say that this is where it's justified. And clearly, you wouldn't be just saying the individual factory worker is enough there. That's just ridiculous. Like, you laid it out, and I think Doobie did too. These people are just being idiots.
Let's go to Ty. Lactoid Corey.
It's a terrible argument.
To go.
Wait, I thought I was after
to-
Ty.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
you. Sorry, did I say that? Sorry, I apologize. Ty, Jade, Chow, Lactoid Corey. I apologize.
Thank you.
Okay, to answer like Prime's question regarding like the acceptable targets for war, I want to make this very clear in the distinction first that I regard war in like whatever the state we are within the Russians now as two different things. There's not been a formal declaration. I'm talking about the United States. So if we kill Dugin or his daughter, like that's a no-go for me. Like that's completely over the bar. However, I'm going to echo a little bit of what Doobie was saying earlier and give my spicy take here, is that whenever you actually get to the precipice of war in the regards that you have formally declared war, you've got open tanks and shit shooting at each other. For me, I'm actually a firm believer in total war doctrine in the regard that whenever you engage with a state-on-state action, the differentiation between the state and its people is null and void. Your prerogative is to destroy that state, and to do that, you are making war upon its population. And every single person, whether they be a babysitter or the fucking CEO, is complicit in the war operation of that system and in that state. Because they pay taxes, they contribute to the society, they continue it moving. Your modus operandi is to break that system by whatever means that you have at your disposal, because you are at war.
So that didn't take long for us to get to that subjective bottom, right? That didn't take long at all.
Sure. So yeah, there's my spicy take for the night. 5 minutes.
I mean,
Sure,
Promkai's already advocated 9/11.
I want to get your direct response.
Promkai's is now a supporter
and
of
other
9/11.
people can go as well. And DB, I see your hand, so I'll put you in the list.
I mean, you know.
Ty, finance minister. Acceptable?
I'm so sorry. I muted myself just so the dogs have been barking the whole fucking night. They're driving me crazy.
No
Finance minister during an act of war, absolutely. Before the act of war, where you're like we're in that quasi state where we are with the Russians now, where we're supplying weapons and shit, I wouldn't press that button personally. I think that's a level too far, especially when you're talking about state dignitary. But if just say the United States and Russia had a formal DOW tomorrow, yeah, kill him. Anyone that is a Russian citizen is on deck. I will actually take that stance.
Oh wow! Oh, that's good.
Even the school bus of children.
That's what I'm telling you, Prime. That's what we were trying to tell you. That you called us our points dumb fucks here, but we just saw it. It took 30 seconds to prove both of y'all.
30 more seconds and we'll justify 9/11 and nukes.
Right? Like, I made a very clear argument here. A very clear statement as to what the lines were. Right? Like what Ty says has nothing to do with what I'm saying. And yeah, your points were a dumb fuck point. Don't try to rescue your point about like who's sucking Putin's dick, right? If you take her out, then the war effort's crippled. I'm sorry, that's a dumb fuck point. Like, and that's not. No one's gonna rescue you from that. Sorry, buddy, it's done.
I don't
need
need rescuing. I'll stand by.
Let's go to Jay Chow.
But you're not making an argument. You're just saying it's dumb.
Shut up.
Yeah.
Do you support
You look
9/11?
like a child.
He doesn't
support
need to.
9/11?
It's stupid enough that he didn't have to address it.
Do you support 9/11?
That's why I don't talk to you.
It's Jay Chow's turn.
Thank you.
Don't talk
Okay,
to me. Nigga,
so
please don't talk to me. I don't want to interact
Don't
with
worry.
you, idiot.
I don't talk to children.
Do
Thank
you support
goodness.
9/11?
You're done.
Okay, so here's a
No?
lecture. Where the distinguishment between combatants and non-combatants comes from is the development of international humanitarian law, namely from the documents of the Geneva Conventions and its many protocols that came afterwards. Now, what defines a combatant is somebody who is actively engaged on the battlefield in the fight. Now, if a combatant were to turn into a non-combatant, they surrender, then they become a non-combatant. You don't kill people who surrender. That's under the laws of war. Now, how we got there is from a history of war, which we saw from very, very back then was very brutal, very bad. There were absolutely no laws, no norms, and we slowly just progressed to the point where we started to establish norms. When, say, there was the continent of Europe, I think so. And they were like, okay, we're not going to mess with our borders anymore. We're not going to be engaging in war with each other. They then moved on to assassination. But then that was also causing them some shit because, well, assassination then led to World War I. And so then, okay, maybe assassination shouldn't be on the table. And so then when we get to this current point, when we're looking back on history and how bloody we can be and how destructive war could be, then we started to make some rules together. We started to set some norms and we started to abide by them. Okay, non-combatants and combatants have to be separated. Combatants are people who are military targets, people who are like managers of the military as well, so like generals, lieutenants, or whatnot. Anybody who's on the battlefield engaging in that act, they are targets, they are valid targets, and we say yes. Civilians, no. I would also put the finance minister under that as well. Now, if you're a believer of like total war doctrine, such as Tiberius, then yeah, finance minister is under that. It just depends on what do you want to believe in more, international humanitarian law, or do you want to believe in, okay, the ends justify the means, we just have to win this as much as possible. Now, the reason why I side with the international humanitarian law is because I don't want the world to go back to that era, to the point where it was total war theory, where we were just raping and pillaging everything and everyone, because guess what? I may not like the United States or Ukraine or Russia doing these things, but guess what? I'm paying tax dollars. I'm complicit. Everybody's complicit in this because we are all indirectly or directly supporting something on one side just by our mere existence. And while one could say that a finance minister is tiers above somebody who is just paying tax dollars, sure, that is fine. The issue then becomes, well, now everybody within the government then becomes a target. And then the destruction, the collapse of a government that then affects the people. And then, well, all of a sudden you have a failed state. And all this for like total complete swift victory. Like this is very similar to like, okay, well, we have to target the Hussein government. We have to target the Hussein regime and we have to debaptize them because they're all evil, they're all crooks. And look at what happened. We celebrated Saddam Hussein's death. Iraq turned into a failed state, and there rose ISIS. And so then there is that historical example that I think supports the international humanitarian law side. Okay, Fanatic, you could say something.
I feel like, bro, like very frequently these Twitch conversations just turn into complete nonsense, and I think this is one of them, right? Because it's like, if we get so reductive that like literally everything becomes, where we start like any person is complicit, right? Like a person, like you talk to any layperson that's not in some crazy debate panel on Twitch with idiots like Fabian, and you ask them, like, hey, wait a minute, like, is a person, a baby that's born, that's just in a regime that's getting some sort of tax benefit to his parents, are they complicit in the war? And it's like, no, of course not. But from your definition, the way you're describing, it's like everyone is, and that's no one thinks of things that way.
No. Okay, let me reach out on this one a little bit, Fanatic, because there's a level where he argued what I was saying, even though he actually disagrees with it, because what you say nobody actually believes in is that there is plenty of theorists that do believe in that, whether it is a baby, whether it's children, whether it is anyone who isn't all the way up to the elders is there who can barely even work because they're 90. Everyone is complicit within being a part of the institution of a state because they help service it in some kind of capacity by their mere existence.
But I'm talking about lay people here. I'm talking about lay people. I'm not talking about like if you guys again get into your crazy academic nonsense.
Fanatic, most lay people are approaching this as she's Russian, she's a propagandist. Fuck her. A dead
most lay people are not approaching it that way. You're just looking.
That's what
you're looking at online people. You're looking at online people on Twitter.
I know
you're looking at online people on Twitter and people on freaking Twitch and involved in like ridiculous conversations like this one, those are the people saying that. If I was asking my mother right now, she's not celebrating that. If I was asking my parents, if I was asking my cousins, if we were to like talk to people offline, no one's thinking that way. That's just some online ridiculous Twitter idiot nonsense. Prime Kai's and his friends might think that way. That's not real life.
No
one
one
here-
here.
that's not-
No one.
Guys,
Hold on. No
God
one
damn it.
here. No one here has actually presented any evidence whatsoever that Daria Dugin actually promoted violence, that she engaged as a crucial quote unquote member of the state, or anything other than the fact that she occasionally supported some state things as a journalist, as someone who is the daughter of someone that maybe very well, that is very, very connected in a state that we know arrests people for the very act of protesting in numbers of more than one, and will then bring the police next to one protester to say that they're protesting in a group. So no one's actually established anything other than the fact that just her being a journalist and not being explicitly anti-war and putting her life at risk has actually done anything in that regard. So yes, you guys are justifying that essentially anybody can be a target if you support this individual as a target.
These are two separate arguments, right? So and at least I can't speak for the other ones because maybe they were mixing this, but I'm not. I separated the Daria from the finance minister, right?
Yes, I'm saying if you support her as a target.
Okay, all right, sure, fair enough then. So I just want to make that clear. I really want to focus on that and establish that, because I thought the finance minister would be an easy one, but apparently not. So there's a lot of discussion here.
Well, I just don't see the difference between that and 9/11.
Fair enough. That's okay. So Ty, go ahead, finish your point.
Yeah, I have two kind of responses to that. The first part was largely what I was talking about a little bit in my intro regarding that. Number one, I don't read or speak Russian, so I can't just be like, hey, this is Dugin's daughter saying this. So, like, I can't make that affirmative because I'm not an expert in that kind of regard. So I can only take secondhand information. She has made statements both very publicly regarding this kind of things. That's what I've been told. And going from there is she complicit in, like, helping this out? So regardless of the war thing, which I've already kind of put off to its side, is that, for me personally, is that her and her father are like brains in the regards that they help at the beginning, but after the war started, they're no longer really that relevant. You're talking about people that are far more kinetic in regards that people who are administrating the war, generals, colonels, military personnel, but also, political leaders, and the fact that they actually make the decisions on the ground. Those people are way more important than this assassination, which is why I'm really confused of why it fucking happened. On the other side of that, to kind of get back where Fnatic was, so when it comes to, like, the average person, I've seen all kinds of people say different things about this. Some people are like, oh, it's terrible. A 24-year-old was literally died in a car bomb. On the other side of that, hey, she was Russian, go fuck yourself, or sorry, go fuck her. Like, normies are fine in this conversation. I have no problem engaging with them on that. The problem is that I don't know what means they have to argue this besides either they approved of it or not. We're kind of getting into the ethics of, is this okay for a nation state to do to another one in the event that this was the case? And I'm sorry that I do have to get very, very technical on that, because not only are we talking about ethics, we're talking about statecraft, we're talking about diplomacy, we're talking about war. And so I've got to bring my expertise to the table on this one, because that's the framework that I think we need.
Let's go to Corey, then Lactoid.
I just want
Assuming it's not terrorists.
I just want to clarify something with Scott, or rather, like, to understand your position more. If I remember correctly, like, it seems like you defined a valid target as someone who violates the non-aggression principles. Is that correct?
Yeah, an aggressor.
Oh, yeah, an aggressor. So, out of curiosity, is, for example, like a barracks filled with soldiers, like, a valid target for, I don't know, like bombing or something?
Soldiers that are actively fighting is, yeah.
Well, so they haven't fired a shot yet. They are deployed, but they haven't fired a single shot yet.
I don't think so. You're talking about, let's say, like, basic training facility, maybe, right? Like, you
Sure.
know that
Yeah,
none of
you
these
have
soldiers,
way more military
like,
experience.
you have the knowledge that no one there has actually actively fought in that regard. Yeah, I don't think that you can actually morally justify that.
Okay. And so,
I mean, it certainly weakens your ability to commit to enact war effectively, but we're asking about what is morally justifiable. And I think people that are, especially in Russia, where you're conscripted and forced to be part of the military, and you've yet to engage in any form of violence towards anybody or aggression towards anybody, as much as I might not like to bite that bullet, I have to bite that bullet because I'm talking about what is morally right and wrong, what is justifiable logically and not. And you can't logically justify bombing a facility of people that have never aggressed upon someone.
No form of preemptive violence would be justified.
If I may follow up, like,
Right.
I just wanted to to push that a little bit further, Scott. So hypothetically, they've been deployed. They're outside the barracks. They're like, whatever, on the field. They're about to fire a shot, but they're technically not justified to fire a shot morally until until someone aggresses.
They're in the act. They're in the act of firing, right? Like, I mean, if you have troop movements in a place and you're in an act of firing, that's defensive at that point.
No, as in whatever. If it's whatever old timey battlefields where it's you have your lines marching towards each other, technically no one's justified to. Well, I think I understand where you're coming from, but someone until people are starting to be mowed down, you can't really. You're not justified.
Well, I mean, if I point a gun at you, right? And I say, I'm gonna rape your family and I'm gonna blow your brains out, right?
I don't think that's how it works.
But just to make it really explicit, right? I haven't committed an act of aggression yet. I don't know, maybe the threat you could presume in some way, but I'm pointing a gun at you, right? You're perfectly since Jay Chow for whatever reason hates John Locke, you've put yourself in a state of war with me, right? I don't know what the fuck you're gonna do. I must assume that you pointing a fucking gun at me and saying you're gonna shoot me is you're put yourself in a state of war with me as an individual. You have every right to fucking shoot and kill me right then and there, even if I've never fired that gunshot yet. I don't have to wait for you to shoot me once or twice to fire off. Just like I don't have to wait for soldiers that are in my land on patrol, coming out of the fob, patrolling in my area, trespassing, right? They've already committed an act of aggression by being there specifically. So I have every right to forcibly remove them. And considering that they're literally armed to the teeth and ready for war, this is an act of war. There's nothing wrong with me shooting and killing individuals that are on my property that are patrolling around. Much less do I need to wait until they fire a gun.
Yeah, but again, I not to get too sidetracked, but I think it's debatable on just an act of pointing a gun. It seems like that violates your non-aggression principle. I fail to see how that actually does. You can point a gun for all kinds of reasons with no intention to use it. I think that happens all the time.
Well, no, with the pointing the gun is that they've put themselves in a situation with me where it is reasonable for me to defend myself as an individual, right? So it's not an act of aggression. It's not an act of aggression from me, right? To kill that person because I'm justified in my reasonable belief that they might kill me and I'm defending myself. I have a right to self-defense.
And I think under the Geneva Conventions, they would be considered a combatant if they're still holding a weapon and they're pointing it at you. The only way that they would be non-combatants would be if they put their weapon down and they stuck their hand up, or they were waving a white flag and they were saying, we surrender, we don't want to fight anymore. And then you take them in as POWs.
Well, Lactoid and then Wick.
I actually really agree with you, Prime, on your position on this. Almost entirely, right? The idea here about war is, my idea about war is that you're trying to end a threat to other people. This is in this case, especially Russia is, obviously aggressing upon its neighbor, and there's aggression occurring constantly. And you're trying to end this threat with the minimal force necessary. And the minimal force necessary here to end the war, to win the war, doesn't necessarily entail bombing the coffee maker or bombing the people who, aren't critical to the war effort, who aren't, progressing that war effort in a way that I think we would agree is significant, in the way that I think troops are, right? I don't agree. If there's a bunker with troops, even if it's a training camp, that is obviously a threat, right? You're going to cripple the ability for any country if America has to go to war with that, and we can't even target their training facilities, and we can't target their manufacturing facilities, and we can't target their naval facilities, we have to wait until they actually come. No, that's not the way. It's just completely infeasible. The only way that we can end the threat as humanely as possible is to, conduct very precise and very effective strikes on strategic infrastructure, strategic military infrastructure, and strategic people, right? The Minister of Finance is a perfectly fine target. He's a government official who's financing a war. It makes perfect sense. The president would also be like the president of Russia, Putin himself. He would obviously be a target, even though he's not in Ukraine with a gun right now. Clearly,
Actually, did you complain when Russia was trying to assassinate Zelensky?
Well, I see Russia as the aggressor here, right? So obviously, Russia is the aggressor. Like Ukraine is trying to. I mean,
According to your doctrine of war, which you said that the purpose of war is to eliminate an enemy, and to do so with whatever means you just stated, that includes targeting high political office.
Yes.
So when Russia, in obtaining their goals, whether you agree with them or not, this is what you're stating. You weren't complaining that they were targeting Zelensky, but you would complain that okay, it's Russia. They could do that, they should do that, but you just don't agree with their war and their
plans. Yeah, that's what I would say, right? So I don't think that the strategy of targeting Zelensky isn't wrong of itself. I think it's actually an effective way to wage war, and it's probably the most moral way to wage war, because you're not targeting people who are non-essential to the military infrastructure. The problem is that Russia's is fundamentally unjustified. They are the aggressors. And right now, slaughtering Ukrainians.
You never specified a distinction between the aggressor and the victim, okay? This has nothing to do with how one should wage war. Whoever is waging war will always believe whoever. No, I never made the distinguishment. I was trying to make that distinction to Lactoid if Lactoid made that.
Yeah, I just did, right? So I agree with what you said, that I don't think like Russia targeting.
But you didn't say that before.
I said it very clearly.
That was just your doctrine.
No. I said it very clearly. So Russia targeting Zelensky makes sense from a military perspective, and it's likely, like, if they're going to be at war, the most moral way for them to engage in that war, because they're actually targeting high-level officials, as they should be, and they're not targeting people who are irrelevant to the war effort, which they shouldn't be doing. However, the motivation
you don't need to say this. You don't need to say this.
Okay, well then I answer your question.
You asked the question.
So I answered the question, but I want to be cognizant of like the optics of this, because obviously Russia's being evil with like their motivation here, and I don't want it to make it seem that I support Russia, because obviously I don't.
So let's go to.
So you're just being a hypocrite in how you like understand war and
how am I being a hypocrite?
He could be wrong without being a hypocrite. I think he's wrong.
Hold on. How am I a hypocrite? Explain that.
I think he's wrong, and I don't even think he's wrong either. I disagree with him. He has a different approach and opinion when it comes to war. I don't think he's wrong.
Prime. Let him answer this. Prime.
Clarification of his argument is not somehow reneging on the statements that he made before. You're using this weird appeal to like in tempori that like if he's never made other clarifications that like
he's playing an optics game. I understand it, but I really don't give a fuck.
It's not a matter of playing an optics game. He's saying that he believes that Russia.
Yes, he is. He doesn't want to make it seem like he's supporting Russian.
Right, he's trying to clarify his position that he believes that Russia is like,
Russia. You know what? You could go get Zelensky all you want. Like, go for it. I think that's really smart. But you know what? You doing this, I don't like it. But you know what? You could totally do that. You're going back and forth here.
Chow. Hold on. In all
you're
fairness,
taking the meta conversation to the conversation, and then yelling at him for engaging.
In all fairness, you were asking the question originally. You were asking him like, would that be a thing? And he answered the question.
Okay.
Yes. In line with my value.
Yes, he's being consistent. I'll give him props for that.
Wait. You said wait. You said I was being a hip. You said now you're saying I'm consistent. But you were saying before I was a hypocrite.
No, you were being consistent. You're being
I'm being consistent and being a hypocrite.
You're wrong or you can't. Either way, everyone can see it. You're wrong.
We're gonna have to pass this. All right, so
I'm a consistent hypocrite. Okay.
No, Fanatic, like, every single response to me has been you're wrong, you're bad, you're stupid, you're wrong.
Okay. You're wrong.
So one of the reasans that
there it is again.
I think that targeting like a commander-in-chief, right, might be morally acceptable because they are they're commander-in-chief of the armed forces. They're directly involved. Targeting generals, right? I think that's perfectly okay, right? Targeting commanders in a war, I think would be perfectly okay. Why I don't think targeting things like the financier, the head financier, or the say the head of the power plants or something, or the head manufacturer or the manager for the manufacturer of a weapons plant would be okay because they're replaceable. Like even taking them out, they're just going to put another warm body in that place. They may not be as effective, but the show will go on. But when you kill infrastructure, right, that takes time to replace it. Frankly, is just more valuable than people. Like when they would target us when we were at bases, air bases in Iraq and Afghanistan and Qatar and other places, they wouldn't shoot at the troops, right? They'd shoot at our equipment. They'd shoot at our aircraft, right? But mortars aren't exactly the most accurate weapon, so sometimes they'd hit the troop. But they wanted to kill. They wanted to hit the aircraft more than anything because they knew that was much harder to place than any individual airman on that airfield. And that's why I think that when we talk about systems of scale, when we talk about waging war, I am totally against total war doctrine. Absolutely 100%, right? I was against the fire bombings in Tokyo. I was against like nuclear bombing, like these things. These things are, what total war doctrine leads to, justifying nuking of entire cities, right? When it comes down to like why I think we shouldn't target I'm rambling. I apologize. I'll be very concise, very clear. Targeting civilians, journalists, and individuals is bad. Targeting infrastructure is based. That's it.
What if and I don't I don't know how I feel about this. But like, what about individuals who? Actually, I already know your answer, so I'm not sure why I'm asking this. But I'll just put it out there in which way. What about individuals who are crucial to like weapons development, right? So like, there's a construction worker who is like they're
scientist, R&D
right?
scientist, like
no scientists. No.
So
especially the scientists.
Say a research and development scientist, like
Sure.
who are about to field some advancement of like some weapon that's a significant advancement in the field, right? Like that'll give the enemy a big advantage on the battlefield. And sure, like it's not like they can't necessarily be replaced, but there are people who are heads of teams, right? Who maybe have
I get it. It would disrupt.
Mossad does this, right? They target like Iranian nuclear
Damn it,
scientists.
Doobie. Yeah, I was literally going to bring this up. Is that literally, even though these two nations weren't at war, Israel went on a campaign of killing anyone who was skilled enough in Iran to build a nuclear weapon, and they succeeded. Like literally, anyone who knows anything about nuclear physics is now dead or has left the country.
It's impressive.
While effective, we can argue the morality of that too.
Yeah, we can. Wait. I just want to go back to where Wick was because I want to like a question. Why are skills, and what I mean skills, like intellectual skills, not a viable target in war? Is it just because it's a person?
Well, yeah, mainly yes, because they're a non-combatant person, right? Because we can we're even in an R&D situation, right? Without the infrastructure to put those skills into place, they are basically useless. And so again, when it comes to doing the least harm possible, like look, if we were in a war of extinction, like obviously if I knew that unless I killed this one individual scientist, that my whole city would be nuked. Okay, maybe in that case, maybe, right? But I don't believe we live in that world, right? And I don't believe in the specific scenario we're talking about that killing either of the Dugins, right, would have it wouldn't have any.
Let's not look at Dugin because that's
I agree with I agree with that.
For the Germans and the Japanese, well, mostly Japanese, but like for the Germans and Japanese, would Einstein and Oppenheimer not have been targets, right? Like
they would have absolutely been targets, but would have been
like valid targets.
Yes, it would. From their perspective, absolutely.
Wait. I've got to ask you this. Okay, so I'm not going to send for Imperial Japan, but looking at it from their perspective, Oppenheimer builds a weapon that kills over 100,000 of their own citizens. How is that literally not a moral imperative to make sure that doesn't happen?
So if you have a choice, right? Like if you can kill the infrastructure that he developed, right, which took years. Let's be clear, it took years to develop this infrastructure. If you could nuke that and spare the people, that's the moral.
Yeah, but you have the infrastructure.
No. In an ideal world, you're absolutely right. I won't fight that. What I will fight is that when it comes to like the kinetic force of application, is that we have to acknowledge the path of least resistance here. sometimes infrastructure is harder than hell to blow up. The Manhattan Project was literally dozens of sites across the country, or you can literally kill 4 people in a room and literally wipe it out. So I'm not like trying to super simp that you don't have a point. You absolutely do, but there is a point where I'm like, you do acknowledge that at some point it's just easier to kill
I
the
already
smart ass
did.
in the
Yes,
room.
it's easier, but
Is it? No, you're just gonna.
It's
Okay.
not,
I'm
it's
not
not
letting
even just easier. It makes more sense, right? So if you have like Oppenheimer, who had decades of experience in a very specific thing, leading up to this creation,
do you not
right?
think he kept notes?
Versus
If you killed him, if
his notes. That's, you think that's going to be enough to replace him? Fuck no. Versus infrastructure that may take a year or two to put together with the fucking force of the government behind it. Absolutely, you kill the guy. Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me
Hold on.
address it.
I
For the
need
Manhattan
to.
Project, they would stand up a new base in no time. Like at some point, knowledge infrastructure. There's a term for this, but like knowledge infrastructure is more valuable than physical infrastructure. Like, and that's why I specifically, brought in Oppenheimer, because this is a breakthrough technology, something never before. This isn't like some sort of moderate improvement to a plane, right? Well, given the other side advantage, it's not that's, but like in terms of something that's breakthrough, really never been before seen, and that will kill. Like, and this is the example, and the reason why I thought of it is because of what you said. You said, "Oh well, this one person will help wipe out my city." Well, there you go. We have Oppenheimer. Right, he's going to drop it in Nagasaki.
But the problem.
Let me ask you a question
real quick. Can I address this?
I want to go.
I just want to address this. Like,
me too.
Like when it comes to how if you could get him at the beginning, right, then you have a much stronger case. But after he's already started working on it, in the beginning, sure. Okay, I'll cop to that. If you knew that this was just thing, okay. At that point, so, there's a calculus and okay.
So we had Doobie, we had Corey, and then
it's off of your own comment, right? Like, what if the Manhattan Project was unsuccessful? If the Manhattan Project is unsuccessful, then what you have done is you have killed scientists just for working for the state. So now what you're saying is that it's okay to kill all scientists in research and development of any country that you're working, that you're fighting in war.
You did.
Right.
You beat
exactly
me. So I'll have to hand that over.
Right.
That's
but I'm saying
exactly
you're using an extreme example. But what you're saying,
Scott, somebody who shoots at you but misses, right? Like, can you not shoot them because they're like blind?
That's an act of aggression.
They were but they were going.
But isn't it also a
bomb? They're building an atomic bomb. They're building an atomic bomb. So even if they fail at building that bomb, okay, if the technology is being sought after by a government that wants to use this technology to blow you up, yeah, absolutely, this is an act of aggression.
If it's U.S. military technology, like we know that's going to be used for one thing.
You're drawing an arbitrary line and saying that it's okay, and what you do is you take an extreme example to try and bolster your idea, but you haven't actually made a line about what is right or wrong. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking the inverse of that, which is saying that every scientist, every person working in the infrastructure, the only person who has effectively, been able to demonstrate their position thus far is Tiberius D. Because Tiberius D bites the bullet and says, I'll fucking kill them all because it's total war. But you guys keep trying to do this past
But I think that's also what we're suggesting.
of like what you think is an acceptable target and not an acceptable target. And the state and the people and the information you have at the time gets to move that line wherever the fuck you want. And what you're doing is you're giving the state essentially total war, and you're trying to not bite that bullet that's what you're supporting. At least
it's a love for me.
But I think that is what we are saying. I don't like. I hope the rest of you agree that in
then
the
stop
case
worrying
of
about these lines.
the case of like the case of like Mossad in Iran, right? So if we know that Iran is seeking nuclear technology, right? They want to make a bomb, and there are nuclear scientists in this country, right? That Iran is going to tap to try to help make this fucking bomb. Of course, it makes sense to target them. Like, why wouldn't we?
Scott, it also doesn't have to be a line. It could be a scale, right? So like a
scale is a line of where you put of where you.
Oh, sure, right. But you're asking Prime. I understand, but what I mean by scale is sure, it's a line in a case by case basis, not just a hard line that Prime has to be okay with targeting every single guy who does science in a nation, or he's not okay with targeting the guy building the nuke. right? We can say, okay, we're gonna like measure every military operation on a case-by-case basis. Are we targeting critical military infrastructure that justifies the use of force? We're using minimal force necessary.
Right.
In the
But
case
now
of
you're
targeting
talking
somebody
about
building
tactics.
a nuke.
You're talking
No,
about
but
tactics.
that's
not
morality. No, I am, because it's a case-by-case basis in which we're measuring the value of the human life, right? We're measuring that value in, again,
Right.
it's the weighted
What you're
against
doing is a consequentialist analysis based on
yes,
like
it is a
imperfect
consequentialist
data.
analysis.
You can't
Yes,
justify
it's a prediction.
Consequentialism can't be justified.
Okay, great. So
I disagree.
Oh boy. Let's go to Corey and J Chow. But yes, I was saying we should kill like the entomologists, right? Those bug lovers. They're critical to the war effort. So they have to die too. Go ahead,
Well,
Corey.
yeah, if they're constructing biological insect weapons, then maybe.
Yeah, maybe they could be.
Yeah,
they could
but
be.
just to address that point and to pretty much expand what you just said, Prime, and Doobie was bringing up to address Wick's point. I can't believe like I'm advocating for this. Like I'm obviously all for preserving scientists, but in the context or the example that you gave, Prime, of like Oppenheimer, where it's like, yeah, maybe it might be okay or morally better to target infrastructure. But that type of expertise, okay, as someone who's a scientist has a very niche expertise, like I'm employed for a biotech startup, I'm not easily replaceable. I am replaceable, but that sort of bleeding edge type of science, that is absolutely like not replaceable. And like, sure, you can blow up a bunch of infrastructure, but that brain and that expertise like still exists, and that infrastructure can be replaced. And even if they took notes, like I take notes, that doesn't mean that any other scientist can like carry on what I do.
Wait, so, Corey, what exactly are you working on?
So my area of expertise, if you want, is surface plasmon resonance. If you can read the Wikipedia
that
article,
sounds dangerous. I don't know.
It's very cool, not dangerous. Some cool spooky.
He
physics.
does work for Canada too, and they might be a
threat. My question is why are we okay with targeting generals who like aren't on the field, who are just in the back like plotting troop movements? Why are we okay with targeting them? But like if someone's in the back,
the battlefield.
If someone's no, let's say they're not even on the battlefield. Let's say they're at
yes, they are.
Okay, hold on, let me finish. Let's say they're at the capital of their own country and they're like thinking up where the troops should go. Compare this to somebody who's like building a bomb that's going to be given to the troops. Like, what's the critical distinction between these two roles?
There's no distinction. The similarity.
So they're both targets.
Is that they're in civilian areas.
Okay, well, Jay Chow, what about
just real quick? The reason why it's okay to target generals, right, is because they wield armies and they are absolutely involved in both the planning and the execution, right? They are literally.
So is a nuclear bomb developer.
Can I got one thing I really need to
say.
It's really important. No, it's not just the weapons developers. One of the biggest conversations in military is strategy is for what the laymen do. Logistics is what really matters. And the problem with this is that if you actually take that principle with any kind of regard, the factory manager is one of the most crucial targets that you can hit in a war, because anytime that you stop a tank from being produced or an anti-tank or anything that can hurt you, that helps your side win or get closer to winning the war. So yeah, when it comes to those people, even though they're not combatants, yeah, they're absolutely valid targets. And I'm not trying to like overly emphasize the side that I'm on here, but it's also, if you understand that logistics matter in war, particularly in how shitty the Russians are in this regard, if you shut down their ability to prosecute the war because they might have 1,000 generals but they have no weapons, then you won. And that's how this
can I just ask a question? So Jay Chow or like others, do you guys think I'll give you two, right? And I just want to be like super clear. So in the height of ISIS, right, there were like training schools where they would take children and indoctrinate them to like the ideology of ISIS, right? And train them to shoot guns and et cetera, right? So the guys running those schools, I would think they're absolutely targets, right? Not the children, you can make an argument for that, but absolutely the guys running the schools. Just as like I'd also be curious because it sounds like the lines you guys are drawing are really fucking weird. What about like Goebbels, right? In World War II, he's not on the field of battle, he's not directing armies, but he's pushing an ideology, propaganda, a Nazi party that is doing terrible fucking things. Why wouldn't he be a legitimate target?
Okay, do you want the practical answer or like the moral answer?
I want the honest answer.
You want the honest answer. Oh, I see. Okay. So the honest answer is when it comes to the ISIS example, terrorists are like given a weird status in international humanitarian law because they're not a part
No,
of any state.
don't give me the legal shit. I want your perspective. Unless it's just totally reliant on the law, and if the law were different, you think something else.
It's
Tell me what you think.
In my approach, international humanitarian law is and like staying consistent with that is pretty important to me. So yeah, I think that those would be fine targets. Now when it comes to gerbils, well, there was kind of like no such thing as the Geneva Conventions during that time, and so then like
so it's just relying on the Geneva Convention. So if that wasn't around, you wouldn't believe this.
Wait, didn't that exist at that time?
I don't think so. No, they came afterwards.
No, I think there's a prior. Wasn't there like a prior one before that? I can't remember. But Jay Chow, are you saying that your prescription here is based like almost entirely upon the existence of the Geneva Convention? So if it didn't exist, you'd be okay with massacring all the people that we're talking about?
Because there was no law and there was no thing today is because we saw how much harm we could have.
Okay, but why don't you think it's okay to kill Goebbels?
Because the Geneva Convention says you can't.
He is a non-combatant, and Goebbels is probably in civilian areas, and so then to target him.
But he's the chief like propagandist for the fucking Nazi party, like during a war. Like what?
Yeah,
is it literally just the fact that he's not carrying a gun on the battlefield?
I wouldn't want to open back the Pandora's box. I wouldn't want to open back the Pandora's box in the norm, the return of the norm of political assassination.
This is ridiculous.
In which that
the problem with this kind of example,
Nagasaki, Hiroshima,
just real quick, if I may, right? The problem with this example is that we can see that it worked, right? Like we can look back at the past, like, oh, of course this was the right decision because it worked. Yeah. The problem with this is trying to apply it to future events where we don't know what affect our actions. We can guess, we can suppose, we can say maybe, but the reasons why I think it's valid, right, to not engage in war crimes and things like that is because it has an absolutely large chance, right,
I have
for
zero
you to
viewers,
win, to lose, I should say, the optics war. Look at what happened in Vietnam, right, where the atrocities as they got out that we committed and things like that turned to public against the Vietnam War, right?
Who lost the optics war in World War II?
We were already against the Vietnam War from the beginning.
We fucking Dresden was firebombed to fucking hell. Like, it seems like we won the optics war anyway.
I want to validate.
Just don't put video of it on TV.
I want to.
That was the mistake we made in Vietnam.
That's the trick.
That's where we fucked up in Vietnam.
It's not a meme. He's right.
Yeah, we fucked up in Vietnam because we showed everything. We shouldn't have done that.
Okay, so look, we're about to the end of this. I want to give credence to the opposing side here. I think there's two really damn good arguments the opposing side actually has in this one. Number one is reciprocity. If you can do it to them, they may very well be able to do it to you, and so the only reason you might actually want to do this is position of strength. As an example, it's easy to nuke Nagasaki and Hiroshima when you're the only one with nuclear bombs. But you'll notice that the moment that the Russians got nukes, everyone was a lot more preoccupied about throwing another one. And so that is a very fucking legitimate argument when it comes to that side. The other one is, do you actually defeat yourself in going to extremities? And we've had this conversation on this very show before, and it's largely been Wick versus Doobie. And I actually sided with Wick on the last one because, as an example, when we invaded Iraq in 2003, we weren't trying to destroy the country and leave it a rotten ruin. We wanted to colonize the country. And in the event of destroying the apparatus that we were wanting to take over, we eliminated it as a functioning entity, which is not what you want to do when you're a colonizer. You actually have to take over the institutions. You have to bend it to your will and, continue to maintain them. What we did effectively in Iraq was that we blew the hell out of everything that organized anything, and we've left it as an semi-anarchist state for the better part of 2 years, which now is a puppet state to the Iranians. Hooray! Strategic victory, well done, United States. Maybe you should have a better plan when you go to war next time.
Libya.
Yeah.
Well, we fucked up there for sure.
Oh yeah. So I'm actually just using those as examples to where the opposing side, while I disagree with them, have points. It's not an argument without ammunition for the other team. It absolutely isn't. I side with on my side were the total war doctrine because at a certain point, and I call war the point where you're just like, all right, this is a knockdown, drag-out fight between two peoples, and that one of them is trying to force the other one to do something else.
that's where the gloves just kind of come off, and like it's not ethical, it's not pretty, but that's what war is. It's the disgusting abomination that humans do because we will force others to do what we want through force.
But in this spirit, I'll give you this real quick, Tiberius.
Yeah.
If we were facing a war of extinction, right? Like if some country had gotten big enough and they were literally going to make America not exist anymore, then I think that certain things become not just justifiable but necessary, and things that I would normally say are horrific and not okay. I if I was in that situation, I might just pull those triggers. I don't know. So that's my thing.
Why does
I don't
the
get-
fate
I
of
don't
the
get-
United States need to be in the balance for you to cross that line?
Yeah,
Like, why would you need to get
exactly.
to the very end?
Stakes matter, right? Like if you losing only means you lose a little, right? Like if
100,000
I was in a
people?
fight, right? If I was in a
200,000
fight,
people?
in a fist fight with someone at school, right? And I know that if I lost, I'd just get a black eye, maybe a tooth knocked out or something like that. You know, that's one thing, right? But if I
You
knew
don't
that
know
the
that.
other motherfucker was trying to kill me, right? And you could, okay. You know when someone's trying to kill you versus not all the
No, you
time. I'll give you
don't.
that. But
Somebody's-
you know, are you saying that a schoolyard fight that they're always trying to kill each other? No,
I'm not saying they're always
obviously
trying to kill you. They might kill you even if they're not trying to, or they're just
True.
really fucking mad and they want to
They're
hurt you.
not.
They're not. They don't have any intention either way. They're
But
just
it
really
doesn't-
fucking
It
mad.
doesn't usually end in that. The stakes aren't usually that high.
Why would you
my
take a
point
chance?
here is about stakes, right? My point here is about stakes. And if you know, right, that with a reasonable degree of certainty that you're going to lose a little, then there are certain activities that just aren't justified, right? But when you know it's going to be extinction, certain activities become justified.
Wick, I have one last
Aggression's
question
never
for you.
justified.
One question
Really
for you, Wick.
simple.
So let's say you have two scenarios. Neither is like an end Armageddon war or whatever. But we have scenario one where we target the finance minister, we target like key infrastructure, we target their like railroad hubs, and like we just like blow those up. And within 3 months, like the war is over. Like they surrender because they've lost basically all their infrastructure and all their key like personnel that were at that infrastructure. And there's like 50,000 casualties or whatever. Scenario two is we don't target them. They're able to mobilize, and then we're like stuck in a war for like 2 years, and a lot more people die. Isn't there sort of like a moral impetus on us to like, if we can end it quickly at the cost of fewer lives lost, we should do it quickly?
But see, the problem with the question is it supposes we know that these are the case.
Okay, what if we can? What if
possible?
What if all the experts project? What if every expert has looked at this and they project?
Yeah, like it's only
we
gonna
do this
be an
now.
in and
We're going to
out,
save
like
more
all
lives.
the. But see, this is the problem. Like Putin, the experts on Putin's side, in and out, like will be done in 20 minutes, right? This will be a 3-day war. That's what they claimed, and so they made these actions based on that expertise. All the experts were saying this, and they're fucked now, right? They're fucked in a very real way. And I think this is why the danger of questions like these come in, is we suppose that we know the future. And there's a very big difference between pretty sure and absolutely sure. There's a very big difference between these two. And that's why the possibilities of the backlash of targeting civilians and targeting non-combatants is so high that it's a no-go, right?
So even when like, okay, so in the two scenarios, every expert's saying like, yeah, there's obviously a chance of number one like blowing back, but number two has a higher probability of more casualties. We just know this, right? You would still say, okay, well, doesn't matter. It's just deontologically never okay.
I think that targets matter, and I think never okay is a wild one.
But again,
in almost every case,
there's nothing wrong, right, with targeting a facility that is state property in a war, right? Like the state is fighting you. There's nothing wrong with saying, just like I said, that's why I brought up Syria earlier. There's nothing wrong with saying we're going to bomb your railways. There's actually nothing in terms of railways, right?
But from who?
You can very easily do that without injuring anybody, right? So you can attack infrastructure. That's not the same thing as assassinating the manager of a tank factory, right? These are different actions. You can say, you can mobilize your bombs and your forces and be like, hey, you have 1 hour to get the fuck out of this factory. Move. And yes, that might cost you in some regard that you're letting the enemy know an hour ahead of time where you're about to attack. But the fact of the matter is that we know that shit anyways most of the time in terms of like troop mobilization. Like they don't have spies, they don't have satellites, they don't have, you know, intel and different things about troop movements. They know where you're going. The difference is whether or not you're targeting the factory workers at a factory that are just doing a job or might even be forced to do said job, and whether or not you're destroying the machines in the infrastructure itself. This is you know, you might say, oh, well, this is actually private property, etc. But I mean, if it is being directly used as property in the means of your attack, then it's, you know, we'd have to look at the material. We'd have to look more at that analysis. But I think you're pretty safe in justifying. You know, like I said, I'd have to look at a specific example of whether or not you could destroy a weapons factory that's making those weapons for war without killing people that work at the factory
Scott,
needlessly.
Scott, what about Goebbels? Like, is that okay?
I don't know why we keep bringing up Goebbels, because when
to be clear, I'm not comparing him to Dugin.
No. Right. But the problem is you keep bringing it up in lieu of like Daria and Alexander Dugin, even though
separate from them.
He was against brotherly wars. He was not for going to war.
Fuck them. I don't care about them.
Right? Like,
I don't care about
he's
that.
Not a propagandist. He's a philosopher.
That's okay.
And possibly someone that's in the inner circle of Putin, right? So I just
That's
want to
cool.
make
I
that
don't
very
care.
clear that, like, I know you say you don't care,
that.
but you're a fucking liar because you keep sneaking it in as
I'm not.
comparisons, hoping it doesn't get challenged.
I've been very far from the Dugin thing this for a long fucking time, right? I'm not talking. When I brought up
You've snuck it
ISIS,
in,
I wasn't
like,
really,
a bunch of times.
When
right?
I brought
I'm
up
just saying.
ISIS training schools, I wasn't connecting them to Dugin either, right? I'm talking specifically about, hey,
Okay.
this person is
What
a
about
propagandist.
Goebbels?
Is a
Right.
literal propagandist, you know, at the head of the fucking propaganda arm of the Nazi Party, radical anti-Semite, responsible for a ton of the shit going on in this country and the growth of this party. Like, would it be reasonable to target him?
No, it's not. It's simply not reasonable to target Goebbels.
What?
He
Why?
answered the question, Doobie.
Yeah, I appreciate
I mean,
it.
I've answered the question. It's not justifiable to use violence against a non-aggressor. He is not.
He's not a non-aggressor.
Okay, well then define aggression by your standard, duty.
Wait,
What
hold
is
on.
considered
So
aggression?
If you're racist, you are an aggressor.
Hold on. You said you didn't. He's not. Therefore, define it so that you can tell me why he is.
Okay, so a non-aggressor would be like the baker who has no involvement in any of the situations.
I didn't say
involved,
give
right?
me an extreme example of a non-aggressor.
I
said
someone
define
who's
or
not
justify why
aggressing.
he is
A person who's not involved in the conflict in any way whatsoever, right? So, but with Goebbels or Goebbels, I don't know how to say the fucking name. You had somebody who was deeply involved at the head of the fucking government, encouraging the aggression. In some ways, orchestrating it, planning it, encouraging citizens to get involved. Right, and growing this fucking radical racist Nazi party, and directing them in such a way that they would hate and attack a certain group of people.
Cool.
Right?
Where's the act of aggression?
So like, it's all over there. All of that is aggression, right? You don't get to see. You don't get to say, "Hey, you know, I'm just telling a ton of people to go murder all the fucking Jews and saying it's a good idea and encouraging policies and programs." And I'm at the head of the fuck. I'm at Hitler's right hand man. I'm doing all this kind of shit. I'm giving speeches to thousands of people, encouraging them to push the Jewish race out of the country.
BLM organizers?
You don't get to do
Should
all
I go
that.
out and kill BLM organizers?
You're not committing any act of aggression. That's stupid.
Should I go out and kill BLM organizers? I mean, the cities are burning. They're saying that America's a racist country. They're spreading an ideology of hate and Marxist philosophy. Should I kill Fanatic for that example?
That's a trick question.
Would I be justified?
Listen, I can answer the question. So first off, I don't think these two things are comparable in any way whatsoever. Why not? But
they're not representatives of the state.
But if you were like a radical, a fucking white supremacist, right, like Nazi, like neo-Nazi, and your plan to create like a white America involved it was
what about communists?
Contained,
they've killed way more than Nazis.
Made it a necessity to take out black leaders, right, and strong black men like Fanatic, right? Then yeah, it would make sense for you from your perspective to target him, to target the BLM leadership, absolutely. Right, of course it would.
And this
that
is
doesn't mean I
prove
agree
that
with
you
it.
have no
that doesn't mean it's a
fucking
good thing. There is a line. My line is that, hey, I'm not anti-BLM. I don't want to kill black people. Right, so this wouldn't be a good thing to do. However,
but what's the difference between communists?
If I were, oh my god,
why can't I kill communist leaders?
Can you just like
in communist propaganda?
You're behaving as if you're like incapable of like empathy, basically.
No,
right? So you
I'm
cannot put
proving
yourself in the shoes of
your
another human
point is
being
fucking
and
stupid.
acknowledge their perspective and why that perspective might be legitimate from their perspective, with their subjective like view of the world. Even if you massively disagree with it, even if it's in conflict with yours, you can agree that this is a position they might have and say, hey, you still don't get to do it because I disagree and I have force on my side.
Yeah,
No,
but
I'm engaging in an
you're
objective
expecting him to engage
position.
in good faith. His only way of engaging is to literally stretch whatever
I'm
you
not
say to the most
engaging in
absurd,
bad faith.
in order to his
I'm
only
not
way of engaging is to
engaging in
observe
bad
whatever you're
faith.
saying
You're
and the most absurd
unable to.
hypothetical, so therefore it doesn't
Fanatic,
make any sense.
you
You can
haven't
say
made
something like,
any
I'm
fucking arguments
anti-war,
this
or you
entire
can say
night
something
other
like,
than
I'm
against
anti-violence, and then
me
he'll say something like, so in
or
this
against
situation
someone
where
else.
your
You're just
child is
saying
being
people are
physically
stupid.
raped in front of your face, and you're saying you can't be violent, it's like, okay, I don't think we should do total
Fanatic,
war. So you're saying for sure
can
that
you
there's
engage
never
in an
excuse
argument
ever to
instead of a
attack
meme?
citizens in any case whatsoever.
Wait, hold on.
It's not really being good faith. It's
You're
just
not
Scott, I
grounding
feel-
anything. I'm grounding it specifically in the idea that there is aggression and we can define aggression.
Sure.
And that
Let's do
the
this.
way that you
Okay.
define aggression is when you attack or directly engage in a state of war of a direct and actionable threat directly at an individual
What's
so that you
attack?
put themselves in a state of war, or that you physically harm someone's persons or property.
Before we do it,
That beyond
Mark,
that, you start drawing
Can
subjective lines.
I ask a quick question? Because I feel like it's not.
There's no difference between
Okay, I understand,
me
I
going
understand.
out
Doesn't
and
hate
killing
speech harm people?
communists
Wait, stop.
and you going out and
Just really
killing
quickly.
Goebbels.
Okay, cool. So maybe there's like a
There's no difference between you
maybe
killing
I think
communists and you killing me from his argument.
I found the fundamental like disagreement here. Okay, like way deep at the bottom. And I'm gonna see if it's true with like a question, right? So like
I gave it
if
2
I-
hours ago with
no,
argumentation
listen.
ethics.
So if I
You just all were too
so
stupid to
you
be able
this
to
is for
engage.
you and Wick. This is for you and Wick and Jay Chow. Okay. So if I'm walking by an alley, right, and as I'm walking by an alley, I see a child in that alley being raped by some random dude, and I don't know this kid, I don't know that guy, but I see it happening, and I know, hey, there's a chance that I could stop it, or maybe I can go get some help. But instead of doing this, I stand there and I watch. Right? I don't participate. I just watch it happen. Am I liable for anything there? Do I have any
First of all,
responsibility?
You
like,
didn't have.
if
you said
you were
no?
just
aggression.
watching,
No.
right?
No.
Like, I'll answer this question directly. Like,
I'll say it's
if someone
wrong
was-
of you.
Yeah, if
in
someone
my
comes
personal
up
opinion,
and-
but
and-
it's not
and,
an unjustifiable position.
But that person
Like-
shouldn't be charged with anything for like just standing there and watching this happen and allowing it.
Not
to happen.
without a previous
Yeah, I don't-
contract that said that they would engage
just
in
simply
God.
observe it. Like, who knows? Like the
Totally
look at
different
any of these
situation.
Things like,
yeah.
how is the law supposed to know if the person was afraid for his life that if he tried to stop it, he would get overpowered? Right? We don't know, and the law can't really.
Okay, so what if you're in a
tackle
group
that.
of people and
And-
all of you just sit there and watch this dude who's smaller than you rape this kid?
He could have a gun. You don't know.
Yeah,
that.
you again, you don't know.
He's totally ass naked because he's raping this kid in the alley.
Doobie, the
Again.
appropriate action then is to call law enforcement.
Yeah, so I'm thinking if you
Stop
don't,
it
if
if
you don't
you
do that,
can.
if you
Like,
don't do
look.
that, and if you don't go and find lots,
You are
help the
you
kid.
are not. You are
You
not.
literally
You
just
are
sit
not
there and
I
watch
would
it
kill
happen.
them.
Would you mind
Or-
stopping for just a moment? I gotta
or-
call the police. Just so
or
Or
you're
you
not-
just walk away and
listen-
go on with your day. Like you
listen,
feel
listen,
like
I
you have
tried
like
to-
no
listen,
moral
I
responsibility
tried-
there, like whatsoever.
Doobie, what I
Absolutely have
tried,
moral responsibility.
Doobie, what I tried to do, and I know that argumentation ethics is difficult for people to understand. And if you want me to walk you through it at some point, I'd love to do that another time. But what I'm describing is what is morally unjustified, right? This situation does not apply to morally unjustified. And what I mean by this is that it is not morally unjustified on its face to not do anything, but it is also similarly not morally unjustified in order to stop this act of aggression. What we were talking about is, what can I say via logic you cannot justify? In this situation, right, one could use a moral objectivist framework or a moral subjectivist framework to arrive at the position of whether or not you could attempt to stop this or whether or not you're wrong for not doing anything. That is a different assessment from me being able to say,
Wait, are you saying that it might be
cannot
wrong to
morally
stop it?
justify?
Sorry.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there are certain situations where you cannot make a claim without a performative contradiction, which is using aggression against another person.
Okay, so this person is aggressing against a child, but not you.
We'll have to leave it there.
Yeah, you're not getting it. Like I said, I'll have to explain it to you at some point because you're not there.
I think I am getting it. I think
Because
you're
he's
just
being
saying weird
pedantic,
shit.
bro. Don't actually try to engage with him. He's not actually engaging. He's just being pedantic.
let's
I'm
go
not
to
being pedantic. You're just not smart
guys,
enough to follow.
So any which way, great, wonderful. It ends like the way it always ends. Thank you all if you've been enjoying this content. Well, we do this all the time. Hit that follow button. Hit that follow button right now. Make sure notifications are on so you know I'm going live. We do 6 nights a week. Don't want you to miss out on any of our content here, especially for social and chat. For our social media, we got Twitter, Discord, where we do all our conversations. TikTok and YouTube. Like, comment, subscribe, and YouTube. So we still have content coming up, right? We still have more for you. We have open panel. So if you agreed or disagreed or whatever that it is, you want to engage on these subjects or other subjects, then come on in. We have open panel. So we do have more content for you. Separate thing is going to be happening. Stick around for that. But we're going to give an outro to these individuals, but we're not done afterwards. So we'll start with Wick. As we always do. It starts because he's the alpha and omega. Wick, thank you so much for being here. Right, look, I need someone. I need a foil. Right,
someone to keep you honest. I get it.
Yeah.
No, thank you for inviting me. I know I get a little heated and I get frustrated, even at Fnatic here, and I say words, right? And I don't necessarily dislike Fnatic, but he frustrates me. That's all I'll say. Anyway, thanks for inviting me. You can find me at twitch.tv/deathofcertainty, all one word. If you like my takes, if you don't like my takes, check me out. And last words on this subject, I think that there is some evidence to suggest that this was a false flag operation by Russia. I don't know this for a fact. There's only very circumstantial evidence to suggest this, but it fits into a narrative that is very good for Russia in these things. So it is something to keep in mind. We don't know, though. We just don't. When it comes to what is a valid target in wartime, I'm going to go take the stance that journalists are just never a valid target. Propagandists are just never a valid target, no matter how effective or how good at what they do, right? Like, if you bomb a infrastructure of some sort, right? A state infrastructure, that can be a valid target. And if there happens to be people in there, there happens to be people's collateral damage is a thing. Sometimes it's necessary, and that's sad. But there is a reason we need to stick to the rules of war, because if we lose that, it's gonna be a shit show, gang, and we don't want that. That's my stance. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, our good friend Scott. Scott, thank you for coming through and being part of all this.
Yeah. Sorry, I dropped out for like a half hour. I was trying to. Anytime I go above 45 viewers, for whatever reason, Twitch like crushes my bit rate, or like just drops like 20 viewers. Or if I get like a raid at above 45, I'll actually lose viewers because I got a raid.
That's weird.
And all that weird stuff. So I had to like reset stream and reset everything because I'm not allowed to go above.
No worries.
Not like to leave after the raid.
It's so fucking
no
weird.
worries.
No, I mean, like, I'll be at like 39 and get like a 25 person raid and go to 26 instantly. It'll be like, what the fuck? So it's just, so I had to reset my stream. But other than that, good old fun. Fabian Liberty, you can come check us out. I guess I'm just going to be doing debates all week. Poly People tomorrow. Thursday, I'll be on another panel with Not So Erudite and Half Baked Takes and stuff. Friday, I'll be on the Crucible against Counterpoints. Should be fun. Check us out. I'm in my debate bro arc, I guess. And if you guys ever want to ask questions about argumentation ethics, you know, you can come and ask those too. Because I believe this wild idea that a justifiable moral position actually has to be logically valid, and all I have heard tonight are people that don't understand logic and aren't able to actually justify their positions. And I think I showed over and over again through the impossibility proof that they're just wrong, and it's factually true that I'm right. So have fun with that.
Okay. Yeah, thanks so much. It's been a while, and I've missed you, buddy. And this was a very enjoyable experience having you around. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, no problem. I make political science videos on YouTube, and I stream occasionally on Twitch. That's twitch.tv/jchowlive. And last words on this topic. For the most part, I follow international humanitarian law, not just because I think we all should, countries and individuals alike should be aware about that. Not just because it is international law, but because I think it is imperative to uphold and keep the strength of the norm of not having political assassinations be a viable tactic even in times of war, because that's how it was like in the past, and the past was really ugly. Just as how in international norms we try to get rid of war as a viable tactic for states to engage in, the same thing applies to political assassinations. And what I will say to the total war crowd, or this is a viable target because they're incredibly valuable and they'll hurt, I think that is, like, in a way, a very risk-like understanding of how to engage in war, and does not account for the repercussions that you will face when it comes to international society, and how that will have terrible consequences onto us and the future of, just in general, humanity. That's really pretentious, Lamau. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, I will go to Fanatic. Fanatic, as you know, you do your thing as you usually do. A bit more subdued this time, right? But still, we always enjoy having you here, buddy.
Listen, typically the way I debate is because I care so little for the opinions of the people that I'm talking to. I try to argue the things that can be proved, the things that can be like the facts, right? Like, so like in the earlier conversation when we were talking about like, hey, I'm saying factually that there is no piece of legislation that you can detach from its violence, right? Like when it comes to Black civil rights. I don't argue that because it's my opinion. I'm not even making the opinion that we should do violence or anything. I'm just saying the fact, right? Typically what I do is try to reduce arguments down to fact-based things, so that way I don't have to entertain other people's ideas, because you can obviously, a lot of people in these kind of conversations don't have working brains. This last topic was almost entirely subjective, right? It's just, do you think it's a good thing, a bad thing, an okay thing, and so on and so forth? It's really hard for me to engage, because that just requires me to be literally listening to and trying to counter other people's opinions. I don't like the way their brains work, so then it's not really a good way for me to argue this. So I'd kind of stat out for the most part here. Anyway, you guys can obviously hear me argue things like, you know, like the guilt or lack thereof for Cosby, right? Or guilt or innocence of Cosby. You can hear me. I'm in the middle of a fight. I'm playing League of Legends. You can hear me argue those kinds of things, right? Because I think that's more of an objective thing. You can figure out, like, wait, is there any actual forensic evidence to the guilt of Cosby, or is it just an opinion based on like the fact that there were 60 women all claiming the same, you know, mass-produced story, right? Like those kinds of things you'll see me get very passionate about, because then I'm like contending with facts and ideas, and then at that point it's not a matter of just, do I agree with the dummies on the opposite end of me's opinion? It's more about, is there actual fact? Is there actual evidence? And of course, there is no actual evidence to suggest that Cosby is guilty. Twitch.tv/Mr. Fanatic. You can look at my music. That's a subjective thing, right? But I think it's pretty objectively good. It's under the name Fanatic, Fanatiq. I do have objectively the best ear on Twitch, as far as like pitch is concerned. That's an objective thing. It's measurable. Yeah, check me out.
Okay, we need to have a pitch contest. That would be interesting. I'm curious how many people would actually take you up.
Objective.
I would love to see it. I'd love to see it. Hey,
we probably
more glory to my friend Fanatic.
Absolutely.
Well,
right,
I don't know that it's quite as simple as that.
To,
unfortunately,
Corey, thank you for being here and asking some
tough
great
love
questions.
causes harm.
Like a really good job today.
Right, and then it becomes like, well, what is harm? And then we get into a really nebulous area of like, what is good harm and bad harm?
Some really pointed questions. So good work.
I appreciate that. Just as I appreciate the invitation, and like I don't know that I have a firm answer in terms of like, who's a valid target or not, based off of like, I came in pretty open of like, sure, ideally should be, reduced valid targets as combatants, but like, what is a combatant? I don't feel like I have an answer to that. The only thing that I have an answer to is like, don't harm the scientists. I think that's good enough for me. I'll leave it at that.
No, we should have killed every member of Unit 731.
Oh my god.
Hey, wait, I'm sorry.
Just look up Geneva Conventions. Come on.
One more thing. I want to point out, by the way, that I did make the very clear statement that no one can name a single piece of legislation that has to do with Black civil rights that isn't associated in some way with violence. I made that statement, and they all tried to act like, no, we all disagree with you. No, you're crazy. And then notice, none of them have come up with any legislation. They still can't name it. So it seems like I'm actually right. You cannot name a single piece of legislation where that's not the case. So the challenge is still there. I'm still waiting on any of you guys to do so. Please.
I'm not going to do that. I'm just going
Not
to say
you, anyone. It's not to any individual. Any of the people that were claiming I was wrong earlier when I made that statement, the challenge is still there. Find that legislation. Wick at one point attempted to talk about the the one in 64, but of course there was violence for that too. So again, the challenge is still there. I don't think anybody was able to do so. I don't think anyone can, because it is factually accurate that we never seem to get Black civil rights in this country without violence. I'm sorry.
Excuse me, sir. This is a Wendy's. I mean, this is the outros.
I'll try to wrap it up quickly.
Yo,
I'm Corey Campbell.
that's pretty good,
Super
actually.
grateful to be here. Always a pleasure with Wick, Scott, Jay Chow. Pleasure to meet you. I don't think I've been on a panel with you, but I will say you have a great camera. You made some great points as well. Fanatic, also always a pleasure. And if you ever want to, out of curiosity, want to go over some climate change research, I'd be more than happy to like either walk you through it or cover some. That would be a great pleasure of mine. And Tiberius, always a pleasure, and my fellow Canuck, Blacktoid, can't thank you enough to, be on these panels with me to represent the true North. And Doobie, also always a pleasure. I'm Corey Campbell, PhD candidate in biochemistry. You can find me on Twitch, Corey Campbell 84, Twitter and Instagram. Literally, it's Corey Campbell. Thanks again.
Okay, thank you so much. Let's go to Tiberius. Tiberius, thank you
I'm not
also
doing
for
that
stopping
right
by,
now.
jumping in. Much appreciated.
Hey man, this was fun. Like sometimes I'm a little like, oh, I don't know about this one, but I was having a shitty day and I just noticed I'm like, wow, Prime had these topics and didn't even reach out. But then you let me come on in, so I really appreciate it, man. It really made my night, and I was glad to argue the 2 points in the particular way that I did. I don't think I need to recap any of that for anybody. So, if for some reason you don't know me, but I'm pretty sure you all do it right now, we're all vets here, is that I'm Tiberius D. I talk geopolitics, but I also talk like political structure, political theory, and economic structure and theory. And then every now and again, I just nerd out and talk about Star Trek or Star Wars or whatever else. You can catch me on YouTube and Twitch, or you can watch me and Connor Points hang out on the Mask Off podcast on Sundays. Without further ado, I want to thank my fellow panelists, because we all know each other, we all love each other, and while y'all aren't respectful to each other this episode, y'all were respectful to me, and I always appreciate that. So thank you, each and every one of you. And I can't wait for the next one. It's been a pleasure this evening.
Okay. Thank you so much. Next we go to Lactoid, and look, Lactoid is upset. He's upset because we keep blowing his cover, right? Lactoid is clearly a secret agent, a member of whatever inferior form of the CIA that the Canadians have. So he's doing his best. What's it called?
CSIS.
CSIS. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds so pathetic. Oh my god. So this is a disinformation campaign, right? Corey Campbell is a open propagandist. I'm having to correct people in chat. There are people who are thinking I'm a Canadian. This is
good.
Like people. The Russians did do this. The Russians and the Chinese did this, and this is how. Like it's very easy. You just throw a couple lies in YouTube comments, and people believe you. But no, I am an American. I'm a Swedish American. Thank you, Prime, for your Swedish representation on these panels, as always. I am Lactoid. You can find me on Anti-Communism United on Discord and Twitch. I am a licensed attorney, and I will be doing legal and political content shortly as soon as I get my brand new camera. So I got a cool new mic, and I'm going to get a cool camera, and that's going to absolve all of my insecurities about making videos, and then I'm going to go ahead and start making those for people who are interested. Also, for those of you who don't know, McDonald's has recently started putting Pokemon cards in their Happy Meals. I've gained about 5 pounds in the past week. I highly recommend if you go to McDonald's that you get a couple Happy Meals. It's very important. I was going through all my old Pokemon cards and I found this, and I'm very, very happy about it. So at the end of the day, I'm happy.
Thank you so much. All right. And now for our amphibian representation, our friend Doobie. Doobie, thank you As always, you were super involved in this one. You've been a little quiet lately, but this one you were super involved. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm Doobie. I help run the politics server on Discord, discord.gg/politics. It is the best and biggest politics server on the platform. And we do tons of crazy shit there that'll probably get it taken down soon. So that's where we find me.
Doobie is another valid target. And if you want to know where to find him, then head up to his
Yo, Sir
Discord server.
Leviticus. That's
Link is in chat at Switch with Doobie to find that link. Okay. Thank you all so much. This was another insane one. Jay Chow has to pee, so I feel like I should drag out this this outro for as long as possible.
Yo, way to wrap me
and talk
out.
about the beauty of the world. Honestly, no, okay. Thank you all so much for being here, every single one of you. We're gonna have open walk on panel right after this. Anyone here can join us, but if not, that's okay. Thanks for your time, your energy, your knowledge, and your passion of my community. I know they appreciate it as much as I do. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.
You just watched a clip from our Twitch channel, Fabian Liberty. If you like content like this, please like and subscribe here on YouTube, or go ahead and give us a follow on twitch.tv/Fabian Liberty.